Weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo der Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeit einheimst kommt, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo mein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst kommt, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo mein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst kommt, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is where we watch the real far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian, because unlike what James Lindsay is doing right now, currently as we speak, in a Twitter space with the QAnon shaman where he is pretending to know what's going on because he's read some cherry-picked academic papers that say the things that he wants them to say. We don't cherry pick academic papers on this channel. We don't write books about Gnostic sex cults and then go pinky swear, trust me, bro. What we do is we watch the real activists, the people who are pushing all the crazy ideas into the world today. If you want to know who's pushing critical race theory into the schools, it is the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know who's demanding we abolish the police, defund the police, it is the people we watch on Socialism Saturday. If you want to know where gender ideology comes from, if you want to know who's attacking parental rights and why, well, this is going to be a great episode for you because that is exactly and precisely what we're going to be talking about today. Because unlike James Lindsay, who has not in any way, shape, or form, I don't care how much he says, pinky swear, trust me, bro, I've totally covered that. I don't care how much he claims he has. James Lindsay has not in any way, shape, or form covered half, I don't know why my camera's off, half as much Abolish the Family content as I have. In fact, one of the staples since I started Socialism Saturday, like a year and a half ago or whatever, has been a focus on the Abolish the Family movement. Because it is real. It's bigger than most people think it is. It's not because socialists don't have kids. They do have kids. It's not because the socialists hated their families. Nope, not that at all. We're going to learn what it's about today, and I'm going to show you real socialist activists who are pushing real Abolish the Family ideas and policies and practices into the world today so that you can understand what is going on and why it's happening. And we're going to be going back to a YouTube channel that I found a long ass time ago called Psychosocial Foundation. And the Psychosocial Foundation actually has a metric ton of Abolish the Family stuff. And we've only watched one of them because our favorite Abolish the Family activist, Sophie, along with her best friend, Emmy O'Brien, who we're going to watch tonight because they are best friends. Like in real life, they're best friends. The last time we watched Psychosocial Foundation was it featuring Sophie talking about Abolish the Family. But we can't watch Sophie all the time. You know, even though Sophie is our goddess, Sophie is my number one internet girlfriend, not to be confused with my number one internet boyfriend, although he wants to be my internet side piece, big tech, whatever. He can be what he wants, whatever. On the internet, I am queer, polyamorous, pansexual, all right? But we can't watch Sophie all the time. Sometimes we have to diversify our Abolish the Family activist. And today I wanted to watch another talk in this series because they've got like 12 Abolish the Family talks. And I wanted to watch another one just called The Problem of the Family. It's their 7th meeting in this series, and it is featuring Emmy O'Brien. Emmy O'Brien has very recently, like within the past, I think like 6 or 7 months, published a book about Abolish the Family. Actually, let me just show you the book real quick. Communizing Care, Emmy O'Brien. Image. Well, I guess I can't do that. Hang on. This one. Bing. Family Abolition, Capitalism, and the Communizing of Care. This is who we're going to be watching tonight. Now, this book is more recent than this talk. This talk took place on July 31st, 2022. So almost 2 years old. We're going back into the archives on this one. I want to take some time to revisit things that we may have overlooked from the past, or some of the talks we watched in this series. We watched them way early on when we just started watching Socialism Saturday. So we're going to take different things out of them that we're going to take this time. I don't think we've ever actually watched this talk, though. I could be wrong. This might be a repeat, but if it is a repeat, we watched it like a year and a half ago. And we've learned so much in the past year and a half that I want to watch it again. So that is what we're doing tonight, guys. It is an Abolish the Family night. While James Lindsay is ringing about a Gnostic sex cult that doesn't exist on Twitter, I am showing you the real cause of all the attacks on parental rights that are happening in the world today. And some people have asked, like, Carlin, why do you keep shit talking James Lindsay? Why do you keep doing it? Like, you're just infighting, blah, blah, blah. Like, can't we listen to you both? Well, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but the fact of the matter is this. James Lindsay is lying to people. He is lying to people about the cause of all of this. He is lying to people about the source of the problem. And because and this is really important, guys, this is not just an internet feud. If you have kids and you are concerned about the attacks on parental rights, and you are listening to someone who is lying about what is going on and why it's happening, then you, as the person who is just trying to protect your kids, are not going to be able to effectively deal with the problem. So people can read about infighting all they want, but I kept my mouth shut for a long time as James descended into the land of retardia. And it's reached a point where I'm not keeping my mouth shut anymore, and I will remind people as much as I damn well need to that he is lying. He is not telling the truth. I don't care if James thinks he's telling the truth in the fucked up head that he has. By the way, everyone knows James has like a traumatic head injury, right? Like in real life. This isn't an own. by the way. I'm not trying to be a bitch about this, but the fact of the matter is, the guy fucked up his brain a long time ago, and everyone overlooked it when he was remaining in the realm of sanity, and now the brain injury has come back to haunt he really did. I'm not making this up. He was talking about this publicly. He had a traumatic head injury in which he nailed the back of his head on something, and it fucked up his brain, and now we are seeing the results of that. And everyone is just pretending that this is normal. It's not normal. And the reason that we know that he is lying is that we watch the real activists. So it seems as though people don't actually know this. Ask James directly. He had a massive head injury several years ago that actually effed with his brain. He used to post about this on Twitter years ago. I'm not making this up. Go check his timeline. I don't really know that much about it other than he had a massive head injury, okay? Honestly. Yeah, Maria says it's true. He talked about it on his first time on Joe Rogan. I'm not making this up to shit talk him. I'm just pointing out that maybe we shouldn't be listening to someone with a massive head injury who is ignoring real world evidence, which is exactly what James is doing. Exactly. Let me get a couple super chats. Jeff, thank you for being a member of the channel for 9 months. I really appreciate it. Pulling weeds in my garden right now. They're all little commies to me. Indeed, indeed. And then Tayton says, if you're new, watch yesterday's stream. It's good. Well, actually, Tayton, you don't even need to watch yesterday's full stream. What you can do is head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. I know I've been neglecting my Substack a little this week. It's been a really busy week. I apologize. I have got so much stuff I need to post in there. I really do apologize. But I did get a couple posts up in the Substack before the show began tonight. And one of those posts that I got up are actually clips from the live stream that we did yesterday. Because yesterday we found a talk that was given by multiple professors at a community college out of California, in which they literally talked about how capitalism created the nuclear family, and it is their job as college professors to teach their students and rally their students as activists to liberate everyone from the oppressive force of the family, to queer the family, to liberate everyone from capitalism. You can see those clips right now on my Substack. If you want to head over there, again, that's Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. You can also see the first of what I suspect is going to be several effing posts. Actually, no, this isn't even the first. This is the second of the posts I'm making about how people are redefining anti-Semitism. Now, what has sucked up the majority of my week is the right losing their goddamn minds over the term Christ is King and attempting to redefine anti-Semitism so it aligns with the goals of the Daily Wire. That's not what this is about. Because before all the Christ is King nonsense started this week, we were watching Socialist talks in which they were arguing to redefine the definition of anti-Semitism as well. And this is a Socialist talk. These were clips from a professor of Jewish studies named Dorian Bell. He is at the University of California at Santa Cruz. He gave this talk at the University of California, Berkeley. And you can see in this talk, he is arguing to redefine anti-Semitism beyond the Jew. Those are literally his words, not mine. You can see right there in the caption of the image. And what he's saying is that it is anti-Semitic to oppose Black and brown migrants coming into the United States, even if those migrants are not Jewish. So it doesn't matter if you're Jewish or not anymore. You can be anti-Semitic towards anyone that's not white, apparently. He also argued that if you are against the Frankfurt School and critical theory, which I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that we are against the Frankfurt School and we are against critical theory because that is the basis of cultural Marxism in the United States, you're anti-Semitic if you're against that. So congratulations, guys. You're all anti-Semites now. How's it feel? Welcome to the club. I've been called an anti-Semite for years by the political right, even though I don't really care if people are Jewish. But apparently that doesn't matter anymore. Apparently none of it matters anymore. Everyone is trying to claim the definition of anti-Semitism, and if you remember what the left was doing years ago when they tried to redefine the term racism, and they did actually redefine the term racism successfully, they're running exactly the same playbook on anti-Semitism now, except that the conservative right is also running the leftist playbook on anti-Semitism. So I'm starting to get into that over on the Substack. No, Kate. No, we're not. This is not about it's not directly about the Jews. This is just the intro. Don't worry about it. We're moving on. You could argue the majority of the Frankfurt School were Jewish, but we're not gonna have that talk today. We're not doing that today. This is gonna be a Jew-free talk. I can't. Anyway, that's what you can find over on the Substack, and I hope to get a couple more things up in the next day or so. And of course, if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can head over there, sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. That gets you access to a variety of perks. Now, programming note, real quick. I forgot. Well, I didn't forget, but I forgot to tell people that I am going to Boise, Idaho this week. So, and this is something, it's actually been planned for a little while, and what's happening is there's a group out in Boise that is that's bringing me out to Boise, Idaho, and they're going to have me do the How to Speak Socialist presentation in front of a live audience at a bar, and they're going to videotape it, and I'm going to be on a podcast, I'm going to be on a radio show and all this stuff. I forgot to tell you guys I was going to Boise this week, okay? I'm flying out on Monday. I don't get back till Wednesday. The talk is on Tuesday. And so I'm letting you know that we're probably not going to do the supporter Zoom on Monday or Wednesday. Actually, I might need to cancel. I think I'm going to need to cancel both. I apologize. This is like the first time in like the history of the supporter Zooms where I might need to cancel both because I'm just doing something that I think is important to do. And so usually if you support my work, you'll get access to 2 Zooms a week. Those Zooms are not going to probably be happening because I'm going to effing Boise. I apologize. It's been a busy week. But what you will get access to is you will get access to come and join us for movie night tomorrow in the supporter Discord at 8 p.m. And it looks like we are going to be watching We're going to be watching The Shawshank Redemption, which is one of the greatest movies of all time, tomorrow night in the Discord at 8 p.m. How you get access to that is by heading over to the Substack, signing up for $8 a month, $80 a year. And tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out a little email that looks a little bit like this. Not this email specifically, because this was last week's. And what I need you to do when you get this email is I need you to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And underneath that red box, for people who are supporting my work, you will get access to the supporter Discord and other supporter perks. And you guys keep me in business. I'm completely funded by you, and I really do appreciate it. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to my Substack, which is wrong thing. Pause. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to the Unwoke Art merch store. There it is. That's the right one. Which is at unwokeart.com. And there's a couple limited editions. There's only one more day to get these badass designs. The first design you can get is the amazing, the iconic Make McCarthyism Great Again design, because we need a new anti-communist revolution in this country. I think we need a good old-fashioned witch hunt. I'm not opposed to this. McCarthy got way more right than he got wrong, and the things that he did get wrong, he probably got wrong because of like the FBI and the CIA. So let's celebrate and proclaim the need for a new witch hunt with the Make McCarthyism Great Again design. You can get that on t-shirts, hoodies, bags, even a shot glass. You can also, for one more day, get the March limited edition of the Unwoke Wiki shirt, which is our tarot card plague doctor, which these shirts are only available for 1 month as a special edition, as a way to fund my Unwoke Wiki project, which is another thing that I should be talking about more, but I'm not going to today because there's just a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, it's got the plague doctor on the front, badass design. This is honestly probably my favorite design yet. I love this design. And then on the back, it directs people over to the Unwoke wiki so they can see all the primary source documentation that we are putting together, because no one else bothers to do that shit. So we're going to do it for you. And you can fund that and all my other stuff by heading over to the Unwoke art store and picking up some sweet swag that you can use to show off your Unwoke spirit. All right. Before we get into the presentation, we do, of course, have a couple of things we need to go over. Now, is anyone new to Socialism Saturday? Is anyone new to Socialism Saturday? If you are new to watching Socialism with me, please identify yourself in the chat. I'm not going to call you out or anything. There's just a couple things you guys need to know about the stream and how it runs. Oh, I didn't see your super chat bot. I apologize. What was the new word that means buy from Spy Stream? I forget. I know what you're talking about, Bob, but I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. I apologize. I know exactly what you're talking about. I just don't remember what it was. So we'll have to go back and take a look at that. William is new. CM just subscribed 4 days ago. Dog Whistle is new. Kate, you're not new. You've been around. Kate doesn't give herself enough credit. Kate has been around. She's been seeing what's going on. Let's see. Returning, but not new. Okay, that's okay. If you're returning, that's fine. Tracy, you're new. Honest Dog Allison says I can't wait to go to Idaho. I've never been to Idaho before. One of the I've been to like 37 states or something, so another state to cross off the list. All right. Welcome to all the new people who are here. Now, if you are new to watching Socialism with me, watching Socialism can be an overwhelming experience. If you think you understand what socialism is because you've watched Libs of TikTok or Mark Levin or even listened to James Lindsay, I'm sorry, but you don't understand socialism. And I don't mean that as any drag on you. It's not about you. It's about the fact that the people who are normally talking about this in the public sphere aren't actually showing you the real people. The only reason I'm doing this is I randomly stumbled upon this like almost 2 years ago and went down the rabbit hole into the real far left socialist activists. And that's what we're going to watch today. These are real socialist activists. And the reason we want to prep you guys for this is that the reason that we do Socialism Saturday is watching socialism is about learning a new language. The reason that watching socialism, when you first get into it, is so overwhelming is that it's going to sound like word salad. They're going to sound like it's going to sound like English, but you're not going to understand what they're saying, or you might get bits and pieces of it, but you're not going to see the full picture. What we're doing here is an immersive experience to help you learn how to speak the language of socialist. And trust me, and people in the chat can testify to this, once you learn how to speak the language of socialist, you start seeing socialism showing up everywhere. You start seeing it show up at the coffee shop that you go to. You start seeing it show up at the library. You start seeing it show up at your kid's school. You start seeing it show up on TV in ways that you hadn't before. You start seeing it show up in the movies. You start seeing it show up everywhere. It quite literally does change the way that you see the world, sometimes in a little bit of a scary way, but in a necessary way, because if you learn the language of socialist, that's how you're going to inoculate yourself to the influence of the left. And yes, sometimes they do flat out tell us what they're doing. Not all the time, but sometimes when we're watching Socialism Saturday, they will flat out tell us what they're doing. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this other thing. They do not hide it. The problem is that no one is listening to them except for us, and so no one knows what's going on, but they're not shy about telling us what they're doing. So what you need to know when you start watching socialism is that socialists speak in a coded language. They use the same vocabulary as us. They do not use the same dictionary as us. The purpose here is to immerse ourselves in their language so that we can start to see it and recognize it and understand it. If this is your first or second week, it might take a couple weeks of watching socialism to fully do that. Just hang in. We will help you get there. Okay? The purpose of what we're doing is to understand their ideology. You can watch someone to understand them without watching someone to agree with them. No, I think these people are batshit insane. I don't agree with them, but that's not the point. I do understand them. I understand how they see the world. I understand what they're doing. I understand what their plans are. I am freakishly accurate at predicting what they're going to do next. That's why we do this. I'm going to ask everyone to refrain from debunking them. I don't want to hear anything like, if they're socialists, then why are they selling books? If they're socialists, then why don't they move to a socialist country? If they're like, their ideas are stupid for reason X, Y, B, and Z. Real socialism has never worked, etc., etc., etc. If debunking was all that was required to defeat these people, we would have already done it. So I need to say everyone to save their energy from debunking and instead focus on learning and understanding what they're doing. If you have questions at any point, even if it seems like a dumb question, and this is particularly new for the beginners here, because there's no shame in being a beginner, okay? Please ask questions. I will answer as many questions as possible. The chat will answer as many questions as possible. I have people that have been watching this stuff with me for years, and so we will help you through this. But if you've been a regular on Socialism Saturday for a while and you keep asking the same question over and over and over again in order to try to get me to give you a different answer, at some point you're going to get an answer you don't like. Because I'm the most consistent bitch on this platform, I'm not going to change my answer just because you don't like it. And the sad reality is that a lot of people who've been listening to influencers on the conservative right, they're expecting me to give a different answer than the one I'm going to give. And they really don't like it when I don't give the answer that they want me to give, okay? I'm not trying to make you angry. I'm not trying to upset you. I'm not trying to trick you. Every single thing that I tell you, I have seen the socialist left say on video, or I've seen them say it in person. So I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm telling you what they say when people like us aren't watching. Number 4, normal chat rules apply. Number 1, don't be a dick. You are in my house, okay? I need you to treat this as though you are in a class. You are in a college level class about socialism. I am the teacher of the class. You are the student in the class. You will not insult me. You will not insult other people in the class. If you do, you're going to get a warning. If you do it again, you're going to get banned. Number 2, no whining. I promise you guys, the far left does not care about your whining. The far left does not care about your feelings. I am the Bobby fucking Knight of teaching people about the left, and there are going to be some of you who really don't like my tone, but I promise you, even if you don't like my tone, you are going to learn. And if you can't handle it, then just get up and leave the class. No one's forcing you to be here, okay? Lastly, don't argue with me. I have watched more of this bullshit than anyone else in the world. I have literally watched thousands of hours of far left training over the last 3+ years. I have been doing this almost every single day of my life. I have driven myself insane doing this. If you want to try to argue with me, go ahead, but most people know that's not going to work, and it probably is not going to work out the way you think it is. All right? So be here, listen, learn. I'm glad all you guys are here. Everyone, please make sure you mount the like button for me. If you don't feel like mounting the like button, you can shake hands with the like button. You can put your arm around the like button. You can do pretty much whatever you want to do with the like button, but just do something with it. There's a shocking disparity between the number of people watching and the number of people who have mounted that like button. So please make sure you do that. Please make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you're watching on. I do Socialism Saturday every Saturday at 6 p.m. Yes, you can have a sexually intense relationship with the like button. The like button is not going to report you or anything. And we always make fun of conservatives like this who come into my chat and don't realize what they're watching, and they just start to shitpost and call us all commies. Should pay more attention, John. Should pay more attention. All right, guys, let's get this party started.
Working with So I'm going to give a little introduction to Michelle and her thinking, and then Hannah will take over. So Michelle, this is sort of my character profile of how I experience Michelle as a thinker. I think Michelle is one of the most incisive critics and patient readers that I know. I'm having a cherry beer. Which is a really wonderful and I think necessary combination for the kind of political theoretical work that she does, which combines many different traditions and.
Hang on, we got a super chat. King of Diamonds, I don't envy your work. Also conservative here. Don't always agree with you, but respect what you do. Been subscribed for years. Hey, I appreciate you dropping by, King of Diamonds. Thank you for the super chat. Guys, if you're drinking something fun, let us know. I'm busting out a cherry sour beer from yesterday because it's going to be red. If you're new here, alcohol helps. Alcohol helps.
Kind of holds them in balance at once without assimilating the vocabulary of one to the other. This seminar also would not exist without her. She is in the syllabus. She's in your breakout room. She's in the spirit of this question, the family question, which she approaches from so many angles. Once we were talking in advance of a presentation that she was going to give on family abolition, and I kind of ventriloquized what I imagined to be some of the potential resistances amongst an uninitiated audience, but also some of my own ignorance upon arriving at the topic. And I, said that maybe it's hard for some people that the only thing that provides them with a sense of relief and security amongst the struggles of living, however pure or contingent, would become an object of criticism, that being the family. And she said that, the project is not about begrudging anyone their ways of surviving the world, or about maligning kind of provisional structures of support that you come up with as a way to deal with the challenge of being alive, but about making the world in general more livable, so that these cycles of social reproduction that force us back into disempowered solutions can give way to a more sustainable commons. And I think that's really in the spirit of the Dalla Costa, and also very much foregrounded in Michelle's essay and endnotes, which is on the topic of family abolition, and which I really recommend everyone read. I actually think we are reading it. I think we will be reading it. So you'll get there. So I think just before they really dig into it, let's just start off with a pop quiz for the chat. And we're going to see who's been paying attention. And this is going to be really helpful for the new people who are here and maybe haven't watched Abolish the Family content with us. Why does the far left want to abolish the nuclear family? And everyone can answer, even if you're new here. Like, throw out a guess. We aren't gonna make fun of you or anything. Why does the far left want to abolish the nuclear family? Yup, social reproduction theory has to do with it, but tell me more, illustration station. Because the nuclear family perpetuates capitalism. Okay, why? Tell me more. Because capitalism, by the way, guys, is defined as private property ownership. Capitalism created the nuclear family, and the nuclear family upholds capitalism because the number one goal of the woke left, the socialist left, is to abolish capitalism, which is private property ownership. Every single thing they do is in service of abolishing capitalism. The nuclear family equals the genesis of private property. Social reproduction. Yep, give me more, guys. Don't just do this. Don't just throw out two words and say that's an answer. That's not an answer, Gray One. Come on, you know this better than that. The nuclear family upholds capitalism by training the next generation of capitalists because it supports capitalism, because of social reproduction theory, because the nuclear family gives birth to new capitalists. The nuclear family produces the future generation of oppressed proletarian workers under capitalism.
The nuclear family reproduces capitalism and upholds the binary and gender roles. Because it upholds capitalism, family, well, no, that's not right. That's not what social reproduction theory is. You gotta answer in relation to the answer you gave me. Let me see. Nope, this is not correct. I don't mean to pick on you. I really don't. I know that you're new here. But this is the reason I'm pointing this out is not to make you feel bad. The reason I'm pointing out that this is not correct is because this is the answer that people generally give when they've been listening to conservative influencers. This is not the reason. I need you to unlearn this if you're going to understand this. Capitalism created the gender binary, which created the nuclear family, which perpetuates future workers that uphold capitalism. Guys, a lot of you have said social reproduction theory. Can you give me a definition of what social reproduction theory is in the chat, please? The nuclear family upholds capitalism by freeing the men to be workers and the women to do the unpaid labor of parenting. I'm seeing a lot of these same answers. So I'm skipping some of the correct answers, but if you got a correct answer, like just pat yourself on the back, please. The gender binary and the nuclear family support capitalism by raising new children, which is the unpaid labor, to be workers for the capitalists. It produces the next generation of proletarian workers. Yep. Dog Whistle Daniel, who is relatively new, so we're not doing this to pick on you or make you feel bad. Family abolition sounds like someone's talking point who lives in a silver van that says free candy. I imagine communists hate. No. This is a conservative talking point. This is not real. I need you to unlearn this. This is not real. I understand why you think that, but I'm just pointing out that it's not correct. Well, no, I don't buy that, and don't whine when I tell you that you got an answer wrong. If instead of, guys, Gray One, instead of whining when you get an answer wrong, what I need you to do is offer a correct answer. Your whining and feelings means nothing to me, bro. Don't throw out an answer before I've even finished asking the question if you don't want to get a wrong answer. It's really that simple. Let's see. The nuclear family supports capitalism through social reproduction, which separated men and women into specific roles, making one responsible for the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. Yep. Oh, this is one we haven't seen yet from SB, because the socialist left considers children to be the private property of their parents. Let's break this down a bit. When I say capitalism, what I mean is private property ownership. What I mean by private property ownership, and this is everything we have on video of the left saying this does not come from me, this comes from them. What they mean by private property ownership is your home, your land, your intellectual property, your individual liberties, your if you own a business, if you own a rental property as a landlord, but most importantly for this presentation, when the socialist left says they want to abolish capitalism, they want to abolish private property ownership, they mean your parental rights. They consider your parental rights to be a form of private property ownership in which you own your children as private property in the same way that slave owners own slaves as private property, and they consider it to be their job to liberate children from the adult supremacy of their parents by eliminating parental rights. That's why we focus so much on Abolish the Family content. That is where the attacks on parental rights come from. If you have questions about that, please let me know in the chat. Social reproduction theory is the family reproduces culture by creating the next generation of capitalists, and education is one tool used to attack the family. Exactly. Seeing a lot of great right answers in the chat. Why are conservatives lying about it? That's a great question. They're lying about it because, well, it's not necessarily a lie. James Lindsay is lying. The reason I say James Lindsay is lying is because James Lindsay knows better. There's no reason for James Lindsay to be lying to his audience in the way that he is. He knows better. However, most conservative influencers are not necessarily lying about this. Most conservative influencers just have not bothered to do what we've done and to actually listen to the leftist activist. So they don't know. They're trusting people like James Lindsay to inform them, and then James Lindsay lies to them, and they just take it as the truth because they don't do what we do. Most conservatives do not do what we do in actually watching the left, listening to the left, analyzing the left. And so they have a completely distorted idea of what's going on that is not hinged into reality. So is it lying? No. Is it grossly irresponsible? Yeah. It's really effing irresponsible. It is really irresponsible to have an audience of millions and millions of people and you don't bother to do the basic legwork to actually listen to the people that you're doing commentary on. It's irresponsible and wrong. That's why, though. All right. Lots of great answers in the chat. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let's keep going.
This makes her really a fantastic fit for the materials that we're reading today. She also, I think, does a really good job of combining a deep historical focus with a active desire for the realization of new social formations. And
hang on, we're getting a couple good questions. Do you know how we can find this communist stuff and maybe help you? Oh yeah, I do. I'm not going to go into a whole explanation of it right now, Dog Whistle Daniel, but if you just hang around my channel, you're going to learn how to find the communist stuff. I will teach you how to do it. And then if you want to come help on our Unwoke Wiki project, where we're actually trying to catalog and document all this stuff, I'm going to be doing a training on that soon to invite more people into the Unwoke Wiki to help us actually be able to build that out. So stay tuned, bro. I would love your help. I'll teach you how to do this stuff
in the future. And so this dual kind of timeline, I think, is also sort of reflected in the materials that we read for today. The one a little bit more historical, the other a little bit more forward projecting. And so, yeah, I think Michelle's work, whether it's speculative fiction, which Hannah's going to read some of the publications and accolades, but Michelle just published a book of speculative fiction that's on the, it's an oral history of future commune that has ceased to exist but will exist in the future. She's a practicing psychoanalyst, and she's a sociologist and historian of social movements, particularly in New York City. I would say all these things, including her friendship, which I feel very lucky to benefit from, is really about coming at this problem, the family problem, from every possible angle, with love and patience, and also a relentless investment in realizing something more livable in the present, while remaining committed to abolition as the horizon that we're working toward. So I will just say thank you so much, Michelle, for everything so far, and pass it over to Hannah, who will give a few more details on Michelle.
Thank you so much, Wen. So Wendy speaks for both of us when she describes this quality of thought and feeling together and on behalf of the other. That's always in evidence when being with and learning from Michelle. So it's a pleasure to describe just, the very on paper sort of stunning breadth of work Wendy took the sort of deeper feelingful, but I just want to echo it. So Dr. Michelle O'Brien completed a PhD at NYU in sociology and is a therapist in private practice in New York City. She's the author of numerous essays and articles, one of which we'll read in just a few weeks in EndNote.
So I just want to emphasize what they just said. Michelle O'Brien is M.E. O'Brien, and Michelle is usually non-binary. She this was a couple years ago, so I think she was more going by Michelle, but she goes by M.E. today. She is a practicing psychotherapist. So the person that we're going to be seeing here today does do psychotherapy on patients. I just want to, and so psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, that's Freud. Freud was a very big thing in like the Frankfurt School. Like socialists fucking love Freud. Socialists are always doing Freudian stuff. Freud is fucking crazy, by the way. And before anyone says anything, if you're new, because I know what's going to happen when you see Michelle O'Brien. First of all, Michelle O'Brien is not trans. Michelle O'Brien does present masculinely, but she's not trans. And before anyone says that Michelle O'Brien wants to abolish the family because, she hates her parents or she doesn't have kids, Michelle O'Brien does have a kid. I 100% know that. I've heard her talk about it on several occasions. So the person we're seeing is a psychotherapist, is not trans, and is a parent. And a far-left socialist activist.
And I'll drop it in the chat now in case you can't wait. I will say that Michelle is a sociologist by training. She's also one of the most deft.
Do not fucking lie in my chat. Michelle O'Brien literally has a kid. Next time you lie in my chat, you're going to be banned.
Rigorous historians of the family, and the one I learned the most from in my own work. So thank you, Michelle, again. And yes, Michelle's also, and this is what I mean by like kind of like stunning breadth of work, the author of Everything for Everyone, which is just out from Common Notions. There are a ton of great events that are coming up. Most germane maybe to us is that the Psychosocial Foundation will be hosting a release celebration and roundtable with Michelle and her co-author, and also someone who's familiar to all of you, Dr. Laura Shihai, who has spoken to us about Fanon, and maybe other surprise guests to be determined. But I just dropped that link in the chat. And so additionally, Michelle writes on gender freedom and communist theory and brings that to two editorial projects. One is Pinko, is part of the editorial collective of Pinko, which is a magazine of gay freedom. And also, as you all know, is a core organizer of the seminar and an associate editor at Parapraxis, the new magazine associated with this foundation that we're so excited to bring to you all later this fall. So I'll get out of the way because I want to hear from Michelle, and I'm sure you all do too. And when Michelle is done with her presentation of about 30 to 35 minutes, we'll do as we always have, which is have questions for Michelle. And then we'll turn to breakout groups after a 5-minute respite. And then we'll all come back and ask Michelle some more questions. So thank you so much, Dr. Michelle O'Brien. It's such an honor to learn with you and from you today and every day.
Thank you both, Wendy and Hannah. Those are far greater introductions than I deserve, and you were both very generous. So, and thank you. You two have been wonderful to work with as co-organizers of the seminar. And thanks as well to the facilitators leading the breakout rooms. So according to the online syllabus for the seminar, today's theme is social reproduction and rebellion. I'll begin by talking about social reproduction theory as a major subfield of Marxist theory and current dominant trends in Marxist feminism. Then I'll outline the present texts, Alexander Kollontai and Mariosa Dalla Costa, with particular attention to how they use moments of mass rebellion to understand social reproduction in the place of the family in circuits of capitalist accumulation. I'll continue looking at how they suggest that gender and sexuality are being remade as women and children contest the private household and prescribe gender roles within context of broader working class insurgency. I'll use this to make some tentative statements about psychoanalysis, the family, and political change. I've been asked to speak for, would it be possible to mute other people? I've been asked to speak for about 30 minutes, and in keeping with some of the feedback on the seminar last week, I'm going to try to make for a very accessible presentation, so covering some of the basics of social reproduction theory. Before I discuss social reproduction, I want to emphasize the immediate, personal, and accessible character of this topic. Phrases like,
So I actually do have a video about this, because this is actually a regular question that gets asked. If you look up why do queer people look weird on my channel or something like that, you're going to be able to find the video. But let's do a pop quiz for the chat. Why do queer Marxists all look like witches? Why do they all look weird? There is actually an answer to this that's relevant. So let me wait for some answers to get in, and we'll be able to answer that question from Sarah. Rottweiler says, I feel conservatives saying they have no children is to reassure themselves that queer activists aren't reproducing, so the problem will solve itself. Another way of saying, we're winning, we're winning. Yeah, that's right, guys. When you assume Marxists don't have kids, nope. When you assume that Marxists are all aborting their kids, Tim Pool, nope. That's not what's happening. Not what's happening at all. Let me get this chat from Nick Incognito. Rest in peace, Louis Gossett Jr. passed away. That's really sad, but he had one hell of a run, didn't he? Rest in peace. All right, let's go back to our question from Sarah, which is, why do they all look weird? Why do queer activists all look weird? Because, and by the way, guys, Abolish the Family is under queer Marxism. Because queer Marxists are going against normativity. The entire point of queer Marxism is not about being gay, it's not about being trans, it's not about any of those things. It is about disrupting normativity. It's about non-conforming. They're rebelling against normativity. They're going against normativity. Normativity is anything that holds up our current social system. That system being fueled by capitalism, private property ownership. That's going to be the main normativity they're going against. But really, anything that's considered to be normal, they're going to be against. They are presenting against the norm, going against the norm. They are all queer. That's against the norm. Remember, guys, queer is not about being gay. Queer is not about being trans. Queer is about adherence to a far-left political ideology. You can be a straight white man and still be considered queer. Disrupt all things normal? Yes, this is a really good answer, Chad. To show their comrades. To signal that they're in the club. To signal they're part of the group. They're queering their appearance to go against the norm. Everything normal is the bad. Nope. Wrong answer, Nathaniel. Nope. It is not a cope. Nope. Wrong, bro. Wrong. This is a typical conservative talking point that is not hinged into reality. We're giving you what the real answer is, which it is against normativity. They're trying to be queer to go against normativity. They also want to look non-binary. That's an excellent answer, Reagan. Remember, queer Marxism is about abolishing the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. To be non-binary literally means no binary, no men, no women, a constant state of genderqueer. Has to do with eliminating the gender binary. They don't want to represent one particular gender. That's exactly correct. And remember, guys, these people believe that capitalism created the gender binary, men and women. That's also the patriarchy. And that created the nuclear family. So by attacking the gender binary, by trying to abolish the gender binary, they are also trying to abolish the nuclear family. Let's see. Looks like I'm getting a lot of the same answer. They're going against normative principles of capitalism, looking differently as queer. Lots of right answers in the chat. Looking weird is activism against the normative presentation of yourself to the world. Queer is a political identity. It's not that they don't like you. It's not that they don't like you. It's that queer activists consider your physical presentation to be a signifier of how adherent you are to the ideology. Remember, guys, socialism is a cult.
I really do mean that. This is a cult. I'm not just being cute when I say that. The people who are higher ranking in the cult are going to give everything to the cult. That includes their physical appearance. In the introduction to the book Transgender Marxism, they literally talk about how top surgery is the ultimate act of commitment that you can make to transgender Marxism. Not because it's going to make you happier, not because it's going to make you look the way you want to look, but because you are making a permanent physical commitment to the cult. Was going against the gender binary... Oh, this is actually a great question. This is a great question. Was going against the gender binary also a tenet of Soviet socialism? No. Not to the best of my understanding. So it's funny because we have this new Revolutionary Communist of America party that just launched like about a month and a half ago or something like that. Those are Bolsheviks, okay? Those are the Soviet socialists, the Bolsheviks. We actually have a member of the Revolutionary Communists of America that comes into my chat every once in a while, and we've looked into this, the Bolshevik stuff. The Bolsheviks don't understand the queer people. These are two different factions. So the queer Marxists are more focused on cultural Marxism. The Bolsheviks are more focused on economic Marxism. But the Bolsheviks, that Revolutionary Communist Party, is already getting infiltrated by the queers. I've seen it. So they don't understand the queer stuff. They don't really talk about the queer stuff, but the queers are already joining their party. And what's going to happen is the queer Marxists are going to try to co-opt it. So we'll see who wins. But these are two different groups. They're both on the far left. They're both problems. I actually think the Bolsheviks are a bigger problem than the queer Marxists in terms of actual organizing power. We can talk about that another day. They're both problems, but they don't necessarily work together. Does that make sense? I actually have an article on my Substack about the difference between non-binary and androgynous, because they're two different things. I have a whole video about it. I have an article about it. Look that up, because they may look androgynous, but this is not about androgyny in the way that you're thinking about it. And I understand why you brought that up, but those are two really different things, okay? They look weird on purpose, but it's also inevitable. It's inevitable if you stay in the cult. If you stay in the cult and get sucked deeper and deeper and deeper into the cult, it is inevitable that you will start to look queer at some point. All right. Really great questions, guys. Hang on. Hang on one sec. I'm just going through the chat. I am banning the person who is continuing to be disruptive. There we go. Let's continue.
Like social reproduction, capitalist accumulation, or even the private household have particular technical meanings in Marxism and Marxist feminism. However, they all correspond to direct personal experiences that we all share in a capitalist society. All of us, with rare exception, grew up in private households organized around the family. Our families functioned not only as social relationships and raising us as children. Families in our capitalist society, almost universally, are always ways that people manage shared economic resources, allocate and distribute unpaid work within the home, and made decisions about work. Families have to figure out how to reproduce themselves in the capitalist society. Someone in the household needs to make enough money to pay the rent, to buy food, to access basic necessities. And the main way this happens is through finding a paid.
Hang on. Daniel, you were not being disruptive. I wasn't talking about you. Don't worry about it, bro. You're being just fine. I like the questions you're asking. Keep it up.
Job for someone outside the home. Our family members play some role in enabling that person to make it to their job. Families also raise their children conscious of their future prospects, making decisions when possible about education and child rearing, attentive to some dimension of labor market conditions. Families, in these senses, are part of the reproduction of capitalist society. In thinking back on
what was that? What was that? What did we just hear? Families, in these senses, are part of the reproduction of a capitalist society. This is why they want to abolish the nuclear family. This is as simple a statement as you're going to get about why the far left is attacking parental rights, why they're pushing gender ideology into school to attack the gender binary, and why they are proactively going after the nuclear family. It is not because they hate your religion. It is not because they want the state to be your daddy, although the outcome is that. That is the outcome. It's not the reason. They're two different things. The reason the left wants to abolish the nuclear family is because they believe that the nuclear family reproduces capitalism. And everything they do is to try to abolish capitalism. There are a lot of outcomes of abolishing the nuclear family that they also don't mind. It's going to make you more dependent on the state. Yeah, it will. It's going to give the state more control over your kids. Yes, it will. They're also pushing surrogacy as like the primary form of like, you know, producing children, which is like, we're talking like a Brave New World thing, or in The Giver, or in Logan's Run, where the state is producing all the kids. That's also an outcome as well. But the outcome is different than the reason. And what I need people to understand here is the reason. The reason is they want to abolish private property ownership, which is how they define capitalism. Let me know if you guys have questions about that. Let's just listen one more time.
Attentive to some dimension of labor market conditions. Families, in these senses, are part of the reproduction of capitalist society.
Families are part of the reproduction of a capitalist society. I just want to acknowledge this super chat from Destiny. Thank you, Destiny. I usually don't comment, but I'm listening to these while I take care of the kids. I just want to say I've been watching for months now. I've learned so much. Thank you for what you do. Thank you, Destiny. I really appreciate the comment. Guys, please mount the like button for me.
In thinking back on our own upbringing, we can think about how was food prepared in your household? Who washed the clothes? Where did the money for basic necessities come from? Who made the decisions about where the family would live? How all of this sorted out is essential to understand the family, your family, as a system of gender and sexuality, as a site of power and struggle, and as an economic link in capitalist society. We all have immediate, direct, and personal experiences with what Marxist feminists call social reproduction,
Bing.
and its relevance for thinking about gender, sexuality, the family problem, and even psychoanalysis. This is even true for those people who are raised outside of families, which could be potentially interesting to talk about if we have time. With this framing, I encourage people to approach this topic not as an abstract technical field, but as something crucial for talking about and understanding our lives. As we shall see, this connects to the unusual character of these readings. Next, about social reproduction. In the 1970s, through the feminist movement, large numbers of women challenged the gender role expectations within their families, the injunction to form families, and the unpaid work expected of women. For those women with ties to Marxist and socialist movements, they found powerful.
When Emmy O'Brien says the unpaid work expected of women, what she means is women being mothers. They also, by the way, socialists don't acknowledge fathers at all. They don't acknowledge that fathers actually do parenting work as well. Like fathers sometimes cook meals and fathers sometimes do laundry and, do like pick the kids up at school and stuff like that. Their premise is founded on women do all of the work of parenting in the home. That is unpaid labor because the state doesn't pay people to be mothers, right? And so they believe that this is why they attack the gender binary, because they want to liberate women from the oppressive gender binary that's going to keep them in the home to be mothers and raise the kids. And they say it's even more it's more impactful on women because not only do women have to do the only parenting role in the home of raising the children, they also sometimes have to have a job outside the home, so it's like double duty.
Resonance and tension between their Marxist commitment to understanding and critiquing capitalism and their challenge of gender roles. Marx was most articulate in examining waged work, the work people do at paid jobs for capitalist enterprises. Given the racism and sexism of the later socialist movement, the unpaid work of enslaved people or women in the private household got much less attention. Marxist feminists in the 1970s began to argue forcefully that the unpaid work—
Hang on. Over on Rumble, I've got a chat that says, but you said you can't tell someone's politics by the way they look. There's a video of me that's been going viral on the internet for literally years. It has tens of millions of views, in which I am being painted as a leftist because I was explaining what anti-racist math is. I, by the way, have been covering anti-racist math longer than anyone else on the internet, to include James Lindsay. I was on Fox News talking about the Coke Be Less White training that I broke. I was asked about anti-racist math, and a clip of me talking about anti-racist math got cut out of context by a conservative to smear me, and I'm called a leftist literally every day of my life to millions of views, all because I had a haircut in that video that conservatives don't like. So if you want to pull this bullshit in my Rumble chat of making fun of people who look a certain way and assuming their politics because they look a certain way, just know that that's going to come back to bite you in the ass. Because not everyone that has a typical stereotypical leftist look is actually a leftist. And every time you guys pull this shit, you just piss people off.
Work of housewives should be understood alongside labor struggle in formal workplaces. Sometimes they argued it should be considered a parallel and separate form of oppression. These people that argued this were called dual systems theorists. And sometimes they argued that gender oppression within the private household should be understood as an integrated part of capitalist society as a whole, so-called—
All right, my chatter on Rumble says they listened to me on Adam Green. Hey man, welcome from Adam Green. I appreciate you're here. I'm just saying, don't make assumptions about people based on how they look, okay? Because there were people in that chat that I had with Adam Green that were assuming the same thing, and they were wrong.
Unitary theorists. As we see with Dalla Costa's essay, these debates often included positions on one now quite esoteric and obscure question of Marxist theory. Is the unpaid labor of women value producing in a strict Marxist sense? Marxist theory means something very specific and relatively confusing by the word value. Unfortunately, in these debates, the political stakes of that became known as the household labor debate. These political stakes were rarely made explicit. Though I disagree with Dalla Costa that unpaid work in the private household is value producing in a strict Marxist sense, I share with her political intent with this argument that women's unpaid labor matters in how we understand capitalism, the working class, and class struggle. In the particular context of 1970s socialist politics, asserting a form of work was value producing was the only way Marxist feminists could try to convince sexist Marxists that it was a form of work that should be taken seriously. Dalla Costa writes on page 283 of our PDF, the core political principle that motivated otherwise arcane claims about value, quote, as long as housewives are considered external to the class struggle at every moment and any point is impeded, frustrated, and unable to find scope for its action, end quote. Housewives, she argues.
It does not matter. Steve, you are the guy that keeps coming in and trying to break my no debunking rule. Don't be fucking cute. It does not matter if the nuclear family is a 20th century invention or not. What matters is what these people believe. Their actions are a result of what they believe. The attacks on parental rights are a result on what they believe. You are not going to stop the attacks on parental rights by saying, is the nuclear family strictly a 20th century invention or like, bro. Snowflake's Nightmare over on Rumble says, why do they believe this? Well, Marx wrote about it in the Communist Manifesto. They've also been taught this in every class that they've noticed that they've had since they've been 5 years old. So they've been indoctrinated to these ideas in the schools. Well, the reason her voice fluctuates is she's probably on testosterone. Queer Marxist, testosterone.
Must be understood as a part of the working class. Leaving that aside, by the 1980s, unitary theorists have begun to put together what became known as social reproduction theory, after a long period when feminist theory generally shunned Marxism through the late 80s and 1990s.
All right, pop quiz for the chat. I like that we're getting a lot of questions tonight. It just means we're going to have an extra long stream. That's okay. Pop quiz for the chat. How do they propose to raise children without a family? And Mojave, what you're not considering is the fact that your kids are not going to be your kids under this ideology. They're not going to be your kids. So who you trust to raise them really doesn't matter, because when these people win, not if, when these people win, your kids are not going to be your kids. So how do they propose to raise children without a family? The community, the collective. The kids will belong to the collective. It takes a village. The collective raises the children. That's what happens when you don't fight back against attacks on parental rights, guys. Your kids are going to be raised by the collective. We're already seeing this start. Every attack on parental rights is this. Every policy in every school district that says the schools will not inform parents if the kids change their names and pronouns is this. It all goes back to this. The kids will be raised by the community, by the community, by the community. Yup, Dog Whistle Daniel is right. Polyamory, queering the family, families of choice. By the state, the kids belong to the community, the collective, the collective. By the family of choice. Exactly. Lots of correct answers in the chat. Well done. Guys, as we're getting more and more correct answers in the chat, sadly, I can't show everyone's correct answer, but as always, please give yourself a round of applause if you got a correct answer. Other Jenny says, no biological kinship is needed if everyone is responsible for raising the kids.
In the last decade, social reproduction theory.
Sorry. Super chat from Queen Beth. Honest question, Carlin. Marxists plan surrogacy and pods for raising kids. Yup. No. Beth, I appreciate you sent this as a super chat, Beth, because honestly, I'd be pretty pissed if you didn't, because I think you know the answer to this. This is not about eugenics. This is not about degrowth. This is not about Margaret Sanger. All of those are conservative talking points, guys. I went to a socialist reproductive justice conference almost a year ago in which they had several sessions against eugenics. The socialist left believes that the conservative right is engaging in eugenics. Now, of course, that's not true. That's bullshit. But the socialist left is not about eugenics. This is a conservative talking point, Beth, and I think you know this, and I think you've asked this before, and I know I've covered it before, but I appreciate you, and I appreciate the super chat.
Has made a major revival. Social reproduction theory argues that a vast amount of paid and unpaid work is required to reproduce the workforce, the people who make it to their jobs. This unpaid work is done in the home in the form of cooking, laundry, cleaning, gestating and giving birth, raising children, caring for people while they are sick. This is also paid work in certain service industries and state institutions like childcare, schools, hospitals,
Thank
and
you,
laundry
Akshay.
businesses. This work is
I appreciate
feminized.
it.
It is done mostly by women. It is seen by many as somehow naturally linked to womanhood and is often underpaid or unpaid, partially due to its gendered mark. Social reproduction theory argues these forms of work are essential as links to how capitalist society as a whole is reproduced. The private household is one important link.
Hang on, I want to rewind to listen to that part again.
Or unpaid, partially due to its gendered mark. Social reproduction theory argues these forms of work are essential as links to how capitalist society as a whole is reproduced. The private household is one important link in the chain of reproducing the workforce. Family life is shaped in turn by available jobs outside the home. Gender in the family, social reproduction theory argues, can be helpfully understood by how they play a role in the functioning of capitalist society. Social reproduction theory has moved beyond the narrowness of debates about the housewife to grapple with paid labor in the home, such as by domestic workers, and when similar tasks of reproducing human life happen outside the home. One of the quite legitimate critiques made of Dalla Costa and other Marxist feminists in the 1970s was that the housewife as a figure of unpaid labor didn't really think about how Black women have long worked outside the home, including do the household labor under white women during slavery and later as domestic workers, including in the 1970s. Social reproduction theory, though I would argue pretty uneven and limited on some important questions of race, takes paid domestic workers seriously these days in a way that earlier white feminists did not. Kollontai and Dalla Costa are writing in very different contexts, each before social reproduction theory was coined or consolidated as a current of Marxist feminism. They both share, however, a strong political orientation to seeing the unpaid work of housewives as an essential part of the working class and capitalist society. They each prefigure many of the core elements of what became social reproduction theory. However, both these essays go well beyond quite a bit of current social reproduction theory.
Well, bro, while you're praying for them, they're winning and they're going to take parental rights. So I hope you feel really good about your lack of action when you're praying for them because they're kicking your asses. This is the If you're watching this and your takeaway is that we need to pray for these people and you don't actually do anything about the fact that they are massively, massively, massively winning, but you feel good about you're praying for them and you're praying that they find salvation and blah, 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 blah. They're going to win. They're going to kick your ass. They're going to take your kids. The problem is that when someone says they're going to pray for you, they do not follow it up with action. I've been an activist in this space for 4 years. I am one of very few people that has lasted as long as I have lasted. And the reason that most activists do not succeed in this space is because of the lack of action of almost 100% of the people who claim to care about this stuff. So don't tell me you can do both. You can't do both. You've proven through years of experience that you cannot do both. So my recommendation is going to be save your fucking prayers for your family and for the people you love, because when we all descend into a Marxist utopia, they're the ones that are going to suffer. And it is your lack of action that is going to cause it to happen.
I would argue that they're able to do so because they each are writing during periods of mass working class rebellion. In each case, this rebellion was
And I don't want to hear anything else about praying in my fucking chat. If you want to pray, you do it on your own time. The only thing I want to hear in my chat is questions about what's going on, comments about what's going on, and discussion about what we're watching. That is it. I do not want to hear fucking thoughts and prayers. Does everyone understand?
initially dominated by men working in factories, but was being taken up in new and extraordinary ways by housewives and women workers. These contexts of rebellion enabled these two authors to forge what were at times novel insights, pushing our understanding of gender and work far beyond what otherwise would have been possible. Kollontai was the only female member of the Central Committee of the Bolshevik Party during the Russian Revolution in 1917. She played multiple roles in the revolutionary government, including heading up a women's commission and heading up various welfare and social service programs. The Bolsheviks were generally much more supportive of women's rights than any existing government was in the world at the time. They quickly implemented universal suffrage for women, made divorce and abortion easily available, and instituted full legal equality for women. As well as the Bolsheviks were waging a civil war against counter-revolutionary forces, they identified the desperate need to mobilize large numbers of women to work outside the household. Lenin and the other Bolsheviks initially valued Kollontai for offering a bold and powerful vision to involve women fully in the revolution. Kollontai saw the unpaid work of housewives as central to the subordination of women. Gender equality, she argued, could be won by transforming unpaid work to collective paid work. She was inspired by efforts Russian women undertook during the Revolution and Civil War for their own survival, forming collective canteens in the midst of mass food shortages, setting up collective childcare centers, trying to reduce the amount of cleaning expected around the home. Kollontai successfully convinced the new communist government to support these efforts at collectivizing household labor. She argued that scaled up and universalized throughout society, these would inevitably lead to the destruction of the private household as an economic unit, the end of the family as a space of compulsion and domination, and the possibility of full gender equality. Here, her theory and logic of the struggle happening were interconnected, each enabling and bolstering each other. Kollontai recognized correctly the radical alternative to the family emerging in women's particular participation in mass rebellion. Riding in the midst of struggle, Kollontai glimpsed the possibility.
Hang on, I want to go back and find where she said this specifically. When people are distracting from the video in the chat because they're whining about their fucking prayers, things are missed. This is why I asked everyone to focus on the video and to stop whining about the fucking prayers. All right, I don't know if I passed it or not.
Forming collective canteens in the midst of mass food shortages, setting up collective childcare centers, trying to reduce the amount of cleaning expected around the home. Kollontai successfully convinced the new communist government to support these efforts at collectivizing households.
We literally answered this question earlier. Rewind and get the answer to the question, or you can search for the video I've already done answering this question, or you can go on my Substack and find the article I literally wrote answering this question. Those are your three choices.
Household labor. She argued that scaled up and universalized throughout society, these would inevitably lead to the destruction of the private household as an economic unit, the end of
the private household as an economic unit. Got it.
Lead to the destruction of the private household as an economic unit, the end of the family as a space of compulsion and domination, and the possibility of full gender equality. Here, her theory and logic of the struggle.
It's important to know that they define the private household. And when they say private household, they mean nuclear family. It's important to know they define that as an economic unit, because this is the argument you're going to run into. Carlin, socialism is about economics, and this is just about an economic model, and blah, 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 blah. But like, what the people saying that don't understand is socialists view the private nuclear family as an economic unit. And so the destruction, the abolition of the nuclear family is an economic question. Not only, well, I mean, it is flat out because they believe that it upholds capitalism. They believe that the nuclear family upholds an economic model. So anyone who tells you that Abolish the Family is not about abolishing capitalism, you tell them that they literally view the nuclear family, the private family, as an economic unit.
All happening were interconnected, each enabling and bolstering each other. Kollontai recognized correctly the radical alternative to the family emerging in women's particular.
In the collective Who is in Charge, I have an article about this on the Substack. You can find it in the Woke, I believe it's in the Woke Mind series. But go to the Substack. I wrote an article about who is the leader on the left. You can find that information there. They do not give a flying F about morality. Only conservatives care about morality. Only conservatives talk about morality. And by the way, you guys think that morality is exclusive to you when it's not, but that's a different discussion for a different day. This is only about, when I say that abolishing the nuclear family is only about abolishing capitalism, what I mean is abolishing the nuclear family is only about abolishing capitalism. Well, they hate all businesses. They don't want any private business to exist. So it's not really a matter of whether it's a family business or not. Nope, this is not. No. Do not descend into conservative retardia. Please do not descend into conservative retardia. This is a conservative talking point. This is not real. All children are going to be naturally rebellious of their parents. This is how they learn about how life works. If you think that childhood rebellion is a socialist conspiracy, that's not hinged into reality, bro. We need you to hinge back into reality. Let go of the conservative talking points, unlearn them, because they are not going to benefit you if you actually want to beat these people.
Participation in mass rebellion. Riding in the midst of struggle, Kollontai glimpsed the possibility of sexual liberation, a new sexual morality, and a fundamental transformation of gender possible through communist revolution. Ultimately, the progressive gender politics of the Russian Revolution were defeated. Soon after the Civil War ended, and with it the immediate desperation of survival, Kollontai's fellow Bolsheviks withdrew their support for her project of overcoming the private family. Kollontai briefly joined efforts at resisting the bureaucratic consolidation of party rule at the cost of working class popular participation,
I'll let
but
you know, T-Bone
ultimately
Man.
she
Don't worry about
quietly
it.
joined
You're
in
doing
the
great.
ensuing counter-revolution. As Stalin consolidated power, Russia's progressive policies around abortion and divorce were rolled back. By the time the women's liberation movement emerged at the end of the 1960s, few knew anything about the bold moves for women's equality pursued by Kollontai and early revolutionary Russian women. Now to Dalla Costa. Dalla Costa's drafted her essay amidst another wave of working class rebellion, Italy's Hot Autumn. Between 1968 and 1972, Italy's industrial workforce was striking en masse, occupying factories across the industrial centers of northern Italy, briefly posing what appeared to be many to be a threat of full-scale communist insurrection. By 1972, these rebellions were spilling into society as a whole. Students shut down most of the country's school system, demanding major reforms. In large numbers, working class women began refusing to pay household bills, refusing to pay the full price for groceries they took, and refusing to pay for transit fares. These auto reductions, as they were called, extended well into the economic crisis of the mid-1970s, leading Italy to have a much longer period of rebellion than most of their European counterparts. In the midst of large numbers of women, including housewives, simultaneously challenging their husbands, existing socialist organizations, and capitalist businesses, Dalla Costa was making an argument for how integral women's rebellion is to overthrowing capitalism. Capitalism, she persuasively and in my mind correctly argues, creates divides between different sectors of society and the working class, dividing, for example, waged men's work outside the home from unwaged women's work in the home. Working class rebellion must necessarily bridge across these sectors, ultimately seeking to destroy the divisions between them altogether. She shares with Kollontai an astute reading of household labor, of the place of the private family within capitalism, and the role of women's struggle in driving forward a broader class struggle. Like Kollontai, writing the midst of rebellion helped her forge new theoretical insights. Dalla Costa clearly and persuasively argued that the capitalist form of wage labor organizes the work and lives of not only of the worker, but also the family, including the unwaged labor done within the home. In this sense, unpaid and paid work are connected together in the gender relation within.
I just want to note that Emmy O'Brien is basically saying the same thing over and over and over again, which is capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. It divides men who go into the working world and do the jobs where they get paid money. It puts women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the family, which is the next generation of proletarian workers. All of this helps to uphold and perpetuate capitalism because of social reproduction theory. I just want to note that because Emmy O'Brien is saying the same thing over and over and over again, and I hope people are recognizing when they hear it, the arguments that Emmy O'Brien is making, because I don't want to have to pause it every single time to say the same thing. Do people recognize that Emmy O'Brien is saying that? Do you guys hear the same thing I do? Capitalism, private property ownership created the gender binary. That's men and women. Men go into the working world. Women are in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the family. The family is the literal means of production of capitalism. It is the future generation of proletarian worker. Okay, it's important that you recognize this, because if you can recognize this in this video, that means you can recognize these arguments when they show up in other places. I just don't want to have to repeat the same thing over and over and over again. So that's why I asked. Not everyone comes at the same place. You see, it's the repetition. Yep. Yes, exactly. Like, you're starting to pick up on the repetition, and this is something that you'll pick up on the more socialism you watch. There is a cadence to socialism. There is a way that they speak. They say the same thing over and over and over again in exactly the same voice. It is hypnotic. They're indoctrinating you into a cult. Don't believe it. We're not going to let anyone get sucked in. But I want people to hear the pattern, because if you can recognize the pattern in the video, you can recognize the pattern in the real world.
Capitalist society through the institution of the family. She writes, quote, "Since Marx, it has been clear that capital rules and develops through the wage. That is, that the foundation of capitalist society was the wage laborer and his or her direct exploitation. What has been neither clear nor assumed by the organizations of the working class movement is that precisely through the wage has the exploitation of the non-wage labor been organized. This exploitation has been even more effective because the lack of a wage hid it. That is, the wage commanded a larger amount of labor than appeared in factory bargaining. Where women are concerned, their labor appears."
Are you listening to James's Twitter space? He's got James Lindsay's on a Twitter space right now saying that queer Marxism is a Gnostic sex cult, and he's calling all Gnostics psychopaths. So James Lindsay is obviously being profoundly productive and hinged into reality with the audience that he's been given, whereas you guys are actually listening to real activists and hearing what they're saying. Has anyone heard any mention of a Gnostic sex cult yet? Well, funny thing, I can't join his Twitter space because he blocked me. So I quite literally cannot join James Lindsay's Twitter space because James doesn't want anyone questioning him. And if anyone tries to question James and tries to show him primary source evidence, he will block them on Twitter because James Lindsay has lost his fucking mind.
To be a personal service outside of capital, end quote. As a side, in the English-speaking world, this essay was distributed as co-authored by Selma James, a British Marxist feminist, with another section not in this version and definitely primarily authored by James.
Yo!
James likely wrote many of the footnotes you read here.
Mark! Thank you for the super chat, Mark. I appreciate it. The only reason Bolshevism failed was they could not destroy the tribe and the family. They know. Yes, Mark, this is an excellent point. Guys, there are two things that is going to prevent them from winning. There are two things that need to be upheld at all costs. The first is private property ownership, which, to be honest, I don't give a flying F how you feel about capitalism. I don't care. There are certainly arguments against capitalism. There really are. There are very valid arguments against capitalism. There are very valid arguments that other systems, I have my slime stuck all over my hands right now. There are very valid arguments that other systems, other economic systems would have certain benefits. We cannot have that conversation right now. Because any sort of contrition that capitalism is a system that needs to be overthrown is going to lead to these people winning right now. And that's because they control the institutions. They have so much power. So you might think you're doing a good thing when you say, we have these problems with capitalism. There's crony capitalism. There's corrupt capitalism. Those are all valid arguments to have. Right now, every single one of those arguments is going to lead to these people winning. So we need to refrain. We need to have some form of self-control to say, that is a battle that we need to fight another effing day. We need to uphold private property ownership. If we lose private property ownership, they win. The other thing that we need to uphold is the gender binary. That there are men and there are women. Now, trans people who transition from being a man to a woman or a woman to a man, they uphold the gender binary. So in that sense, leave them the F alone. If a person like Buck Angel wants to come out and say there are men and women and there are women and men and I just transitioned between the two because it helped me solve a mental health problem, leave them alone. They're doing the Lord's work. If the gender binary falls, the nuclear family falls, which means these people win. The nuclear family is dependent on the gender binary. You lose one, you lose the other. So we need to protect the gender binary at all costs, and we need to protect private property ownership at all costs. And if we do both those things, these people can't win. That is the fight. To protect private property ownership and protect the gender binary. Does everyone understand that? We have to choose our battles. If you don't like trans people, you are allowed to not like them, but can you please not fuck with them right now? Can you please focus on something that I understand that they're like, you are allowed to not personally like something, but that doesn't mean you have to cause problems, okay? Sometimes we just need to pick our battles. And forget the fucking book bans. The book bans are going to accomplish nothing. The win is protecting private property ownership. That is the win. This is the only win we have, guys. Protect private property ownership. Protecting the gender binary is a form of protecting private property ownership. Without, like, if the gender binary falls, the nuclear family falls, and then private property ownership falls. That's the only win we have right now, is like, we're in a defensive mode. We are not in an offensive mode. We are in a defensive mode. And that is because we are so effing far behind everyone. Like, we are so far behind these people. The only thing we can do is hold them off. And if we hold them off, they lose. So that's all we really have right now.
Later, Dalla Costa and James had conflict, including over the authorship of this essay. This version is the best we are able to find, and it was likely largely written by Dalla Costa. Dalla Costa, however, differs from Kollontai in one crucial respect. On the question of work itself, Kollontai shared with the entire working class movement of her day, including all anarchists, socialists, communists, and other working class revolutionaries, a vision that communism could be won through a workers' society, through the generalization of the experience of work to everyone, and a government and society based on working class rule. It is becoming parts of the waged working class in a society run by the working class that will free women. Notably,
I don't think that really matters, Kane, if I'm honest about it, but thank you for the super chat.
Communism being the abolition of wage labor and class society. One of the new elements that emerged in the rebellions of the late 1960s were mass critiques of work itself as a capitalist institution. Counter to the persistent role of wage labor in the Soviet Union, revolutionaries were beginning to argue that overcoming capitalism must necessarily be the overcoming of waged work as a domain of social life. This is reflected in Dalla Costa's argument. Demands for wages for housework, she argues, are ultimately made towards the intent of refusing work altogether. She insists repeatedly that work refusal, the overcoming of work, is central to the project of working class emancipation. While most social reproduction theorists are more like Kollontai in not being very critical of work itself, other recent family abolitionists like Sophie Lewis or my own work share Dalla Costa's critique of work.
We love you, Sophie. We miss you.
What does this have to do with psychoanalysis? Here, as a clinician, I will try to speak to other clinicians who might be present, though I think adjusting the language is broadly relevant to everyone here. In a very concrete, clinical way, social reproduction theory helps think about a whole dimension of our patient's upbringing and present family configuration. There are quite a number of quite specific dimensions that shape patient psyches in both classical writings and the contemporary clinic. Who did the housework while the patient was growing up? In Freud's writings, servants, maids, and governesses make frequent appearances. In non-affluent heterosexual households, children likely grew up seeing their mothers or maternal figure do a huge amount of household labor. Observing the distribution of household
my
labor
love.
shapes a child's grasp, gender and sexual difference, the particular logic of Oedipal conflict, and the formation of superego and ego ideals. Who worked outside the home? In the mid to late 20th century, gender relations transformed dramatically as more and more mothers went to work outside the home with young children in daycare. Not outrageously, commentators suggested that this may play a role in many people today having significantly more flexible relationships to gender and sexual identity, as they had.
So socialists believe that the government should be paying for all childcare. So that might sound like a really great thing, right? Because daycare is fucking expensive. And it's one of the reasons I won't have kids, because I'm not paying for that shit. And I'm sure as shit not looking after them all the time. But like, and I know that's one of those things. It's kind of like with universal healthcare, where it might sound like it's an appealing thing. Like the government's going to pay for all this stuff. So I don't have to worry about insurance and I have to worry about all this insurance bullshit. They're just going to pay for, you know, someone to look after my kid. I mean, that's primarily what people use the public schools for, right? But don't be fooled. Government-controlled childcare is not going to be any better than government-controlled education. And someone asked earlier, how have people gotten to think that abolishing the nuclear family is a good idea? Well, they got that way because the schools taught them it was a good idea. So that's been going on since kids were 5 years old. They get dripped out this content through the government-controlled schools. And if the government's controlled childcare, that's going to be more government propaganda that's going to push this ideology on your kids. So don't be tricked by the free stuff. It's a bad idea.
Witnessed a breaking down of one set of rigid gender norms while they were growing up. How did the family manage money? Depending on a child's class position, how their family managed, talked about, and made decisions about accumulated wealth, burdensome debt, or periods of unemployment could all play major roles in shaping a child's psyche. As both traumas and as bases for various kinds of neurosis, the child's observations about their family's money stress or money secrets will definitely play out in analysis. As these questions are ones that social reproduction theory has thought a great deal about politically, Marxist feminists are arguably the most extensive and thoughtful treatment of explaining why and how family life has changed over the course of capitalist development. But these two authors, I argue, go beyond most social reproduction theory. By thinking about these issues in the middle of mass rebellions, they see the potential of rapid, dramatic transformations in gender and sexuality, which has implications in analytic work. Kollontai imagines that the deliberate breakdown of a private family under communism could give incredible new opportunities for genuine love, healthy sexuality, and gender and sexual freedom.
Listen, let me play that again. The breakdown of the nuclear family under communism could give incredible opportunities for genuine love. What do they mean by that? They mean love that is not based on biological kinship. That means families of choice. Genuine love, healthy sexuality, and gender and sexual freedom. All of that is about queering the nuclear family. When we talk about like a queer family of choice, which is what yesterday's presentation was on, that's what they're talking about. That is the family of choice. Mike, Parapraxis is the name of a journal that Emmy O'Brien is one of the editors of. That's why the channel is named that. Let me play that again. So someone asked, like, why do they want to do this? Do these people just hate their parents? Do they not have kids? It's not that they hate their parents. It's not that they hate their kids. It's that they actually genuinely believe that if they abolish the nuclear family, that's going to be better for everyone.
Breakdown of a private family under communism could give incredible new opportunities for genuine love, healthy sexuality, and gender and sexual freedom. She imagines the basic developmental role of the family would instead be taken by the workers' state, just as canteens will replace private kitchens and skilled teams will replace...
I'm sorry, what? Just as canteens will replace private kitchens. I have like 4 different clips of these people talking about replacing private kitchens. Why do they want to replace private kitchens, you ask? Well, socialists want to control the food supply because when we get to the socialist utopia and when they assign you the job working in the fields that you don't want to do you know what they're going to say? You're going to go do that job working in the fields that you don't want to do, or you're not going to get your rations. Because what they're talking about doing, and they do actually have these things, they have these things called like revolutionary socialist architects. There are literally socialist fucking architects. And they're talking about re-architecting cities so that they have central locations for the canteens so they can set up the communal kitchen where everyone goes to get their food and everyone dines together. And you don't need a private kitchen anymore, right? Because if you're just going to the canteen to get your food and everyone's just dining together at the canteen, then why would you need a private kitchen? I mean, maybe you keep some snacks or something in your house, but you don't really need your own refrigerator. You don't need your own oven. You don't need your own stove. You don't need any of that. You basically have like what you would get in like an Airbnb or something. Maybe you've got like a hot plate, maybe like a toaster oven, like one of those little European fridges that doesn't really hold anything. That's what we're talking about. And you guys think I'm making this up, but Denver, Colorado has literally designed their city around this garbage. I've got other clips on my channel if you want to learn more about the kitchen stuff.
Canteens will replace private kitchens, and skilled teams will replace unpaid cleaning. Even in childcare, quote, the workers' state will come to replace the family. Society will gradually take upon itself all the tasks that before the revolution fell to the individual parents, end quote. If this process continued, it would have fundamentally remade the basic coordinates of Oedipal conflict, childhood development, and required a rethinking of the Freudian model of the psyche. The horrors often cited of Romanian orphanages need not have been the only outcome.
Right in the ass.
Kollontai envisioned child-rearing practices that integrated the parents, skilled workers, and the broader care from comrades and society as a whole.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Green New Deal was pushing all this stuff. Like, do you guys think it was an accident that Joe Biden wanted to get rid of gas stoves? No.
She writes on page 98, quote, in place of the individual and egoistic family, a great universal family of workers will develop, in which all the workers, men and women, will above all be comrades. This is what relations between men and women in the communist society will be like.
Wait. A great universal family of workers will develop, in which all workers, men and women, above all, will be comrades. I'm pretty sure that's what she said. So, you know how we talked about how, like, capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. Another word for the gender binary is the patriarchy. That's what created the nuclear family. That's what upholds capitalism. The number one goal of queer Marxism is not to form a Gnostic sex cult, James Lindsay. The number one goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary, to get rid of men, to get rid of women, to have a whole society of they, thems, non-binary means no binary, of gender fluid, gender queer, constantly evolving gender, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. But what Emmy O'Brien said is that above all, men and women will be comrades. They, them equals, that's exactly right. Tayton, this is beautiful. That's exactly right. Anytime you see someone with they, them pronouns, that's a comrade. That's a member of the party. That's a member of the club. Let's listen again. They're not men and women. They're comrades.
Practices that integrated the parents, skilled workers, and the broader care from comrades and society as a whole. She writes on page 98, quote, "In place of the individual and egoistic family, a great universal family of workers will develop, in which all the workers, men and women, will above all be comrades. This is what relations between men and women in the communist society will be like. These new relations will ensure for humanity all the joys of love unknown in the commercial society, of a love that is free and based on true social equality of the partners."
We just don't know true love,
End
guys,
quote.
because we have men
I
and women.
share with
We don't know
Kollontai a
true
sense
love.
that a free society would necessarily be one where the responsibility for children is shared between parents and broader communal relations of care. At rare historical moments, psychoanalysts have begun to think about such relations, but that project is largely left undone. Dalla Costa identifies something beyond the narrow roles of the family form already present in women enthusiastically joining the working class rebellion. I am particularly struck by when she describes housewives entering collective struggle and encountering their family members and their neighbors on the streets as comrades. This fundamentally transforms their potential relationships to each other.
Exactly, Joseph.
On page 285, she writes, a common solidarity against a common form of labor. In the same way, women must stop meeting their husbands and children only as wife and mother. That is, at mealtime after they have come home from the outside world. Every place of struggle outside the home, precisely because every sphere.
Well, you know what's funny about this? Who's in this movie that's a socialist? This is a special pop quiz for the chat. I ran into him at the Socialism conference. Who is in this movie? Wait, no, different movie. Wait, no, same movie, different movie? Is this Princess Bride or is this Spaceballs? I thought it was Princess Bride, but it could be Spaceballs. Whatever. Wallace Shawn, who's in the Princess Bride, total socialist. I ran into him at the Socialism. And yeah, I thought it was the Princess Bride. I thought it was. And then, and do you know who was, and Wallace Shawn was sitting fucking front row at this bitch's presentation at the Socialism conference, which was about she basically presented her book at the Socialism conference, and Wallace Shawn is in the front row. He's taking notes. Sophie Lewis was there. I was like, holy shit, it's that guy from the Princess Bride. Anyway, is there a psychological reason why communism doesn't work with humans? Or is it that humans have transcended needing that compared to 500? I mean, human beings are inherently selfish, right? Like we can believe that we're altruistic all we want, but there's been a debate in the psychology community for years and years and years. Everyday therapists can back me up on this. Like, is altruism actually a thing? Do we actually even have the ability to care about like other people before we care about ourselves? And I would argue no. I think that I agree. Altruism is selfish. Even when we think we're serving other people, we're really serving ourselves. I mean, you could make the argument like, I'm you, you're me, we're all connected. By serving you, I'm serving myself. And I think there is validity to that. But it is also true that we get a psychological benefit from doing service to other people. So we get the warm fuzzies as well. So why can't communism work? Because we're inherently selfish beings, and we will always put ourselves and our biological kin above everything else because that's the way that we're built. Altruism gives us a dopamine hit. So is it really altruistic? No. That's not to say you shouldn't do it. You know, I'm you, you're me, all that. But you're still serving the self when you're saying I'm you, you're me.
Of capitalist organization presupposes the home, offers a chance for attack by women, factory meetings, neighborhood meetings, student assemblies. Each of them are legitimate places for women's struggle, where women can encounter and confront men. Women versus men, if
exactly.
you like,
It's
but
why
as
it always leads to a
individuals,
dictator.
rather than mother, father, son, daughter, with all the possibilities.
Wait, what? Say again.
For women's struggle, where women can encounter and confront men. Women versus men, if you like, but as individuals, rather than mother, father, son, daughter, with all the possibilities, others to explode outside of the house, the contradictions, the frustrations the capital has wanted to implode within the family. I would argue that she is pointing to the antagonistic dimension here of what is actually a very common experience in mass rebellions. Old social relations and roles break down, and the opportunity to encounter each other as people in radically new ways emerge. This is also a beautiful and succinct description of a dimension of how we can understand the very purpose of the psychoanalytic process. By working through our transference neurosis, through which we encounter everyone as if they were our family members, we remake and rediscover ourselves. In that process, we learn to encounter again our analysts,
that was rude.
The people in our lives, and even our family members as individuals, as comrades, as people we are able to fully see for the first time. The promise, the offer of psychoanalysis, is to learn to relate to others beyond the baggage, the accumulated trauma, and the desperate agendas that typically drive our lives.
Yo, that's actually interesting that she says that. That psychoanalysis, which is Freud, they're all obsessed with Freud. Psychoanalysis is to relate to others beyond the baggage. So they're essentially everyday therapists. Tell me if this makes sense, because I think you know more about Freud than I do. Yes, as I previously covered, Emmy O'Brien is a she. Emmy O'Brien uses they, them pronouns, but Emmy O'Brien literally has a kid. So are they using Freud in terms of like getting people to see themselves as like part of the collective? Everyday therapist, why are they like everyday therapist knows more about Freud than I do. I was always more of a Jungian girl, okay? I thought Freud was crazy, and so I ignored him. That was just the way it went. How are they using Freud to try to like get people to see themselves as comrades? Because like I said earlier, this is just something anecdotal that I've seen. A lot of fucking socialists are psychoanalysts. Like Bot and I have been looking into like socialist psychologists and socialist psychotherapists that are like helping to queer the nuclear family and helping polyamorous couples to be successfully polyamorous and that sort of thing. They're all crazy, but like how does Freud relate to getting people to like assimilate to the collective as communists? I don't know the answer to that. They never talk about Jung. They never talk about him. They only talk about Freud. They're using a bastardization of Freud as presented by Reich, and Reich, who was a Marxist, rewrote Freud. There it is. They're using a bastardization of Freud. Thank you, everyday therapist. Appreciate it. Let's want to rewind this a little bit and listen again.
Learn to encounter again our analysts, the people in our lives, and even our family members as individuals, as comrades, as people we are able to fully see for the first time. The promise, the offer of psychoanalysis is to
Ooh,
learn to
good to
relate
know.
to others beyond the baggage, the accumulated trauma, and the desperate agendas that typically drive our lives.
By the way, Jung liked tarot cards. Jung was a big fan of tarot cards. I'm just saying.
On the other side of the transference, the other side of our fantasy, we can encounter each other fresh.
Well, that
to
explains
confront
all of
each
it.
other, to fight each other, to love each other as
Explains
the people we
everything.
are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for that incredibly moving end as well. So as is how we do it here, we will now take questions for Michelle and to think with Michelle, as well as these two texts for about 15 minutes. Alex, go for it.
15 minutes? There's like almost
Hi,
well,
everyone. Thank you, Michelle, so much. That was
way more than 15
so
minutes.
incredibly comprehensive. I don't know how you covered so much ground in such a short period. I have a question about the Kollontai text. So first, I was wondering what you make
This is like
of
a study
how
group.
she thinks about the historical development of the family. Does she see the changes to the family under capitalism as progressive, or as like
Yo,
to some extent?
Brooklyn, if you're in that fucking Twitter space with James, please do it. Please do it, Brooklyn. Represent all of us. I can't be there. I'm blocked from the Twitter space because James is an asshole. Brooklyn, I need you to represent us. Anyone that is not blocked by James, I need in that goddamn Twitter space. You have all of our support, Brooklyn. Don't let James give you any shit.
Liberating for women, and then because I know you yourself have written about transition, I was wondering what you think about how she's thinking about transition, because as you said, she is in a moment of like transition. Is it like the development of the productive forces would lead to the family withering away, is how she puts it at some point, or is it something that the government has to implement, or is it the collective experiments that inspire her? Is there like an element of prefiguration? I wonder what you make of like the history, but also the transition to communism.
That was because you said Christ is king.
Like a lot of thinkers writing in the middle of revolutions, Kollontai says many slightly contradictory things. I mean, I think she's a more consistent thinker than most, but she was writing in the midst of rapidly changing political conditions and trying to make sense of that.
Brooklyn.
And her writing was also polemical. It was designed mostly to enlist and inspire women to put pressure on the Bolshevik leadership around pursuing particular political gains. And so, you know, I don't think there's quite a systematic theory on all these questions, but there is across her writing actually a fair amount of consistency. I would say that I haven't found her to be a super coherent theorist of the history of the family under capitalism. She shares with many, many other people of the day a sense that women working outside the home is a basis for social equality, and that the sort of pressures of capitalist development drawing women into the workforce as being...
Well, Carrie blocked you for a Jesus gift because Carrie is in a cult, and Carrie cannot have anyone else interacting with Jesus in a way that she does not personally approve of, because Carrie is in a fucking cult and she's an insane person. That's why she blocked you over Jesus.
A progressive advance that then needs to be taken further. She's also writing in a dominant peasant society, and in a society where large numbers of women are definitely not working outside the home, where many peasant families sent sons into the cities to work, but kept daughters at home to continue doing household labor, is my understanding of it. And that this played out in urban contexts where the sort of degree of proletarianization of women was widely varied and extremely uneven. So she, more so than theorists in Germany or England, really saw the persistence of the housewife, not the achievement of the housewife as a normative, stable family norm, you know, that emerged in the end of the 19th century, but the persistence of the housewife.
Wait, side note, I got to show you guys something. Look at these Legos that Victor gave me earlier. Victor gave me an Easter bunny and Easter eggs made out of Legos for no reason. It's not like we celebrate Easter or anything, but I just wanted to show you that. Anyway. Oh, our communist friend is here. Hello, communist. Some of our comrades were tabling at the park today. Apparently, someone came up to them and started yelling that we're a transphobic cult. Yeah, that would actually probably be a James Lindsay fan. I'm not saying that you guys are. I was actually communist. I was very specific on this stream. This guy's a member of the Revolutionary Communists of America. He's a Bolshevik. I was very clear on this stream, and my audience can attest to this. You guys don't buy into the queer shit. I tell people, you guys are not the same as the queer Marxists. No one listens to me because they're all listening to James rant about a fucking Gnostic sex cult. But what I will say is the queer Marxists are going to co-opt you guys. They're already starting to co-opt you guys. And so if you think it's not coming for you, it is. But no, I'm on your side. Bolsheviks are not queer Marxists. You guys are two different. You're a different problem. You're a problem. And we're not your friends. And you can hang out with us and watch Socialism if you want, but we're not your friends. But you are a different problem than these people. Cosign. If you guys, listen, if you guys want to join forces with us in terms of fighting back against these people, that is an unholy alliance that I would be willing to make. Because these people are fucking crazy. And if you guys want to speak out against these people, I would be fully supportive of that. I would amplify all of it. I would talk about it all the time. I'd be like, look, the Bolsheviks are speaking out against this bullshit. I don't know. Take it back to your comrades. Let me know what they say.
Due to the persistence of feudal social relations, which is a very different history of the housewife. And so all of that is sort of crashing together as happens in the uneven and combined development of Russia at the time, right? You have peasant housewives, working class housewives, women in the workforce, all of these things really mixed up together. In terms of transition, I would say that Kollontai shared with a number of Bolsheviks a sense that the self-activity of the working class, the deliberate intervention through state policy, and the development of productive forces were all consistent with each other. For a few short years there in the middle of the revolution, as huge numbers of working class people were in like a mass democratic rebellion before the consolidation of a bureaucratic state, I guess we could say. During that moment, like what large numbers of working class people, in this case women, were doing, what the state was proposing, and what needed to happen all seemed to be potentially compatible. And so I think none of them had a theory of transition that could necessarily parse the differences between those. And partially because of that, I think they were not well equipped to sort of recognize the implications of bureaucratic consolidation that happens later. And so for Kollontai, these active, self-initiated survival strategies of women being like, we are starving, let's throw our food together in a collective canteen and feed our neighborhood, were happening concurrently with the Bolsheviks being like, canteens, that's what we need, which were happening.
Hang on. Tayton says, my question is, does USA or Canada turn fascist? Neither. Canada's going Marxist. I mean, Canada's already way more Marxist than the US. So they're going to be very socialist. I think the US is going to be, I think the Marxists are going to have their revolution within the next 15 years. So neither. We're all fucked irreparably because no one actually cares. We're just preparing for the inevitable.
Concurrently with this being a means of drawing large numbers of women into the workforce to become a part of the revolutionary struggle in a way that's served Bolshevik interests during the Civil War, and that all of these things more or less fit together in a way that the later period of, say, capitalist development in the 70s and 80s, drawing large numbers of women into the workforce in the service of capital, which Dalla Costa spots. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she spots that women working under capital will not be a progressive advance. And Kollontai doesn't know that in the same way. So yes,
women in the workplace would not actually be a good thing because women in the workplace support capitalism. Do you guys understand how these people are not progressives? Socialists are not progressives. Socialists don't want anyone in the workplace. There is an entire anti-work movement on the socialist left that we've talked about it a little bit. We haven't gone that far into it though. Women in the workplace is not equality under socialism. They don't want anyone to work.
I think these things don't have to be teased out in the same way in Kollontai's thinking.
Well, send it to me in an email then. Send it to activelyunwoke@gmail.com. Because honestly, if you guys fucking start denouncing queer Marxism, we'll be on your side on this one. You guys have many bad ideas, communists, but like, I understand that you guys don't ascribe to this, but you need to understand that you need to make that clear to the general public, because the general public is going to equate you guys with the queer Marxists. I promise you, apparently they already are.
They're all happening concurrently. Yeah. Should I try to answer Madeline's question, or?
Please, that would be great.
Well, I'm not one that thinks, I don't think contemporary social reproduction theory is all that coherent. And some critics, people who are hostile to social reproduction theory point this out a lot, but they're hostile. I'm not hostile to it. Like, I think it's really useful to look at all these different forms of work that happen in society, paid and unpaid, underpaid, unionized, whatever, like having to do with bodies, having to do with physical objects. There's so many ways of parsing the distinction. You know, healthcare and education are two of the largest sectors in the advanced capitalist world right now. And like, those are large.
You know what I would really love? You know what would be fucking epic? This is a horrible idea, but I'm just gonna say it out loud because they're both in the chat right now. I'm just gonna say it out loud. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could get the communist to talk to the super sexy National Socialist side piece? I would host that, man. I'm just saying that if the communist and my internet boyfriend want to have a conversation about, you know, the benefits of, you know, their ideas, I think we'd all be here for that. I don't want to pressure any of the men in my life, but I think it'd be pretty great. I'm just saying. You guys can let me know.
Actually feminized sectors, and we really need to understand that. And similarly, the household continues to play a really important role in capitalist society, even in the absence of housewives, right? So we need social reproduction theory. We need a way of theorizing all these things together, but there is no way to cleanly.
I'm not trying to start trouble. I just think it'd be an interesting conversation.
Social reproductive labor from other forms of labor. Every distinction that anyone comes up with actually falls apart if you lean on it very much. Waged and unwaged.
Oh, you're a techno. Okay.
Bodies and commodities.
Well, fine. Close enough. Remember, the F in communism stands for food. Exactly.
Commodities doesn't do it. Value producing and non-value producing doesn't do it.
What is
Service
it?
industry
What does it mean to be a techno-fascist? How do you define that?
versus manufacturing doesn't do it. Like, all these distinctions don't quite add up, and that, I would argue, is because gender doesn't quite add up. The social reproduction theory is trying to think.
Hang on, I need to refocus. This fucking cherry beer is like 7%, and so the cherry beer has gotten in my head. I need to refocus on, does gender add up? Okay, everyone focus.
Producing and non-value producing doesn't do it. Service industry versus manufacturing doesn't do it. Like, all these distinctions don't quite add up, and that, I would argue, is because gender doesn't quite add up. The social reproduction theory is trying to think about the feminizing force of the division of labor. So it's not that these tasks are then like assigned to women because women are associated with these things, that actually there's a dialectical relationship happening between the reproduction of what we think of as gender and the gender difference and the division of labor. The other piece I would add to that is violence. That the other major dimension of gender is how violence is organized within the household.
What's the definition of violence?
Within society at large. And that social reproduction theory, its biggest failure, I think, is inadequately grasping the intensity and severity of violence as a shaping force in gender relations. And in this way, like, I sort of think as the fundamental political theoretical tension of our era is in trying to think what has been called Afro-pessimism and Marxism alongside each other.
Afro-pessimism.
The world is both a global organization in the division of labor and a global organization in the distribution of violence, and that these are the same system, right? They are literally the same. Like, they are not separate institutions, but Marxists historically have really, like, when Marx is writing, work was incredibly violent. Like, it's not that wage work in the factories was incredibly violent. Like, this was long before OSHA, right? He was reading about men who would get mutilated.
Oh. Watch. I'm going to create communist infighting. This is going to be great. I'm going to be the focal point of getting the communist factions to fight each other. Our communist friends, our Bolshevik friend says, if gender doesn't exist, then what's the point of fighting for feminism or women's liberation? No, let me explain to you what the point is. Because the queer Marxists believe that there will not be gender equity until we abolish gender. They literally do say this, bro. The queer Marxists say that the only way to achieve gender equity, because remember, they don't believe in equality, they don't care about equality, they only care about equity, is to get rid of gender entirely and to make everyone non-binary. That's what you're fighting for. That's your team. We are not your greatest enemy. I've been talking on the internet about how well organized you guys are. I've been talking on the internet about how everyone needs to pay attention to you. No one's listening to me. Do you want to know why they're not listening to me? Because of these people. These people are always going to get more press than you. These people are always going to get more coverage than you. If you guys want to be the big fucking communist swinging dick in the United States, these people are your biggest enemy. So I really think you guys need to be out there and you need to be fighting these people. You need to be denouncing these people. You need to be talking about what these people believe is bullshit. If you guys want to fight for feminism and women's liberation, go to town, bro. Because at least you're acknowledging that women exist. These people don't acknowledge that women exist. They don't acknowledge it's a real thing. I've covered thousands of hours of these people. They're not your friend, and they are trying to co-opt your movement. When I went inside your recruiting call a couple weeks ago, you guys had a queer Marxist on that call, and I don't even think you realized that you had a queer Marxist on that call. Take it for what it's worth. I'm just going to sit back and watch either way. Let's see. Techno-fascist means using mech suits and drone lasers to destroy everyone who I don't like, then living in a robot utopia with only... Okay, well... Okay. So you're going to take out everyone you don't like? I assume I get to live in this scenario. As long as I get to live, I don't really care.
Constantly on their jobs, but that isn't integrated into the core of Marxist theory, and that thinking about what the implications are of gratuitous mass violence is...
You know, I have to say, internet boyfriend, I'm becoming more acclimated to your ideas. I even proposed like book banning the other day. I was like, what if we just ban all gender ideology books for like a period of time? Like, what if we just ban all gender ideology books for like 10 years and we just try it out? I mean, generally I'm against book banning, but since things have gotten so bad anyway, why not just outlaw it and just see what happens, and maybe things will get better. I don't know. I can be in the robot utopia. Oh. See. Good for me.
Like one of the great contributions of Afro-pessimism. Similarly, like being a trans woman is partially about being excluded from kinds of work, but it's also about being subject to certain kinds of violence in your life. And race and class are obviously central to thinking about that. So this is, you know, we need a theory that does this, and we don't have it yet. Social reproduction theory, I think,
you're obviously coming to the robot
is
utopia.
very powerful and very useful, and I certainly see
I'm
my
gonna
work
vouch.
as in its legacy. I think it, the fact that gender at its heart is not a conceptually coherent category means that social reproductive labor.
Gender at its heart is not a conceptually coherent category. One more time.
Is very powerful and very useful, and I certainly see my work as in its legacy. I think it, the fact that gender at its heart is not a conceptually coherent category means that social reproductive labor ultimately can't be a coherent category. And similarly, I think it's been a little overly dominated by like a
holy
trust.
Shit. So Emmy O'Brien's argument is that social reproduction theory is not valid or not thought through because Emmy O'Brien does not believe that gender is real. So one of the bases of social reproduction theory is that there are men and women. That's the patriarchy. Men are in the workplace. Women are in the home, doing the unpaid labor of raising the future generation of proletarian worker, blah, blah, blah. But if gender is not a real thing, that completely undercuts the idea of social reproduction theory. Does everyone follow that? If men and women don't exist, if men and women are just a social construct and they aren't real, then you can't have social reproduction theory, because social reproduction theory only works out and is coherent if gender is a real thing. Does everyone understand that? Yep, leave it to Emmy O'Brien to move the goalpost. And that gets into, if gender and sex aren't real, women's rights aren't a thing. Exactly. But this is why they say that in order to achieve gender equity, we need to abolish gender altogether. Because if we just abolish gender altogether, then everyone has equal rights. Done.
Trotskyist-informed, narrow, analytic Marxist political economy, and has sort of lacked from adequately really integrating in a more dialectical way its critics. So like the encounter between social reproduction theory and Black feminism, for example, has often been very fraught. And there's just a tremendous amount they can learn from each other. Ashley Borer wrote a great book on this, but learning from each other requires thinking beyond as the sort of existing categories that people deploy. And I think there's a real resistance to doing that in some Marxist circles. Yeah, oh, looking back on the question. Yeah, so, but social reproduction theory is enormously powerful for locating the family in the history of capitalist development and thinking about the role of the family in the reproduction of capitalist society. My own research on family abolition, which you all read, tries to—
So Emmy O'Brien does not have a problem with social reproduction theory in terms of saying that the nuclear family perpetuates capitalism, and in order to abolish capitalism, we need to abolish the nuclear family because the nuclear family is literally the means of production of capitalism. Emmy O'Brien's cool with that. Emmy O'Brien just doesn't like that social reproduction theory says that men and women are a thing. Does everyone understand the difference of that? Let me know if you have questions. Does anyone's brain actually hurt? This is why we have alcohol. Alcohol is your friend. I'm just saying. It's a Saturday. You're allowed to drink. It's cool.
To bridge that with thinking about the place of sexual deviancy in anti-capitalist rebellion and working class rebellion and class formation. That the working class has always been both families and those excluded from families. And like we have to think these alongside each other in dialectical tension in order to make sense of the history of the working class.
I'm gonna get that gingerbread beer next. I'm almost done this cherry beer.
Questions?
We have time for one or two more before we take our short break. And of course, we can come back on the other side of breakout groups, having spent some time more with the
Gigantic
text.
gingerbread beer.
Come back
8%
to Michelle again.
Imperial.
But any questions raised? Great, Abby, go for it. Thank you.
This is a little bit of a half-formed thought, so apologies for that in advance. But first, Michelle, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really wonderful, and particularly I'm not a clinician, and yet the moments when you were speaking particularly about like clinical insights, I took like 17 pages of notes, and it was just extraordinarily helpful.
Yes.
So thank you.
She's a clinician. Yes,
I was
she is.
thinking as you were talking about Dalla Costa, about a classic essay by the feminist philosopher Susan Bordeaux called The Reproduction of Femininity. And I was thinking about how do we think psychoanalysis alongside Marxist feminism or social reproduction theory, this broad question that you're posing for us. And Bordeaux talks about, she reads symptomatically like key figures of women at different periods. So starting with Freud's time, she's talking about the hysteric as the sort of paradigmatic.
This beer is super, super, super alcoholic. I can smell the alcohol from like here. Oh, this is like super hoppy. Did I accidentally buy an IPA? Like, what happened? Oh, it's a fucking ale. God damn it. I thought it was a stout. Yeah. Definitely tastes like an IPA. Not saying I'm not going to drink it. It's here. I've already poured it. I'm probably going to just sip on it, but it definitely tastes like an IPA. Not cool.
And then moves into the 50s and starts talking about the agoraphobic, and then moves up to like the 80s and early 90s and starts talking about the anorexic. And so here is my like completely half-formed thought was as I was reading this, I was like, can we read the housewife as a symptom in some way? Is that a generative kind of question to ask? I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and see if that was something worth thinking with in your opinion.
Yes, absolutely, right. I mean, one way that I would place at Alex's paper on hysteria, Alex Colston, hysterics and obsessionals, and sort of thinking about the hysteric social bond is really quite relevant to this. But I think I am certainly of a theoretical tradition in psychoanalysis that sees hysteria as persistent, as a widespread phenomenon, and not as a sort of 19th century anachronism. And I've slowly discovered that that is an extreme minority position amongst practicing psychoanalysts. And I think Lacan was very right that hysteria is the discovery of hysteria is a way of making sense of universal dimensions of the human relationship to language, power, the body. Hysteria is where we begin to understand how human knowledge works, or really core dimensions of it. And I think this is absolutely true. And that there are key features of hysteria that are inherent to being a feminized person in a gendered division of labor and in a gendered organization of violence in society. And the contradictions of that, like what does it mean to be constantly terrorized by the people you love? It's a really good question. It's kind of an inherent question to being a woman in the world, right? And like, there's a lot to say in thinking about that, right? These kind of ambivalent attachments that the history of thinking about hysteria is a way of trying to parse that. I think there was a lot of writing in the 1960s about this sort of horrible fate of the housewife, the sort of housewife as an isolated, depressed figure.
Hey, listen, T-Bone Man, you don't sound dumb, bro. You're new to socialism. It's cool. You are asking some great questions. So just keep it up, bro. Hang out. It's all going to come together, I promise.
And collective action and feminism being her sort of mode of liberation. And that writing, I think, very much is sort of using a whole set of psychoanalytic categories, psychoanalytic insights, and how they parse it.
Here's what you need to know, T-Bone. IPAs are pissing contests for men to see how bitter they can go in terms of beer. There are some okay IPAs. Dogfish Head 90-minute IPA is good. Some argue that hazy IPAs are better than normal IPAs. I don't know if I believe that, but, some people, whatever. No, IPAs do not taste like pee. We're not talking about like Bud Light or something. Like IPAs are not nearly as offensive as like Bud Light or Coors Light or like Miller High Life or like something like that. But they're just pissing contests for men. And I'm sorry, you can get like really alcoholic beers that actually taste good. I haven't had Shipyard Monkey Fist. I'm a big fan of like Shipyard. I like their pumpkin beers, the Pumpkinhead or the Smash Pumpkin. Anyway. All right, guys, we've got about 20 minutes left of this presentation. If you were enjoying Socialism Saturday, I do this every Saturday at 6 p.m. And so I hope you'll come back and join me next week. Just as a reminder, I am flying out to the bustling metropolis of Boise, Idaho on Monday because I'm doing a presentation at a bar in front of a live audience on Tuesday. If you are in the greater Boise area, I will be posting information about that. But what that means for you guys is that we're going to have a little change to our schedule this week. I'm sorry I didn't announce this sooner. Honestly, I kind of forgot that I was going to Idaho. But as it turns out, I am going to Idaho. And so I had to tell you guys sometime. I'm pretty excited by it. They're going to film my How to Speak Socialist presentation. They're going to have me on a podcast. I'm going to go on a radio show, all that good stuff. So if you are in the greater Boise area, let me know. But we will be adjusting our streaming schedule this week. I'm not saying I'm not going to stream. I'm just saying we might need to be a little bit flexible, okay? Because flights and travel and time zones are a thing. But anyway, let's continue and let's wrap this up. Please mount the like button if you have not already. Please make sure you are subscribed on whatever channel you're watching on. Let's finish up.
And they're trying to think about the housewife as a
Oh, wait.
symptom of
Hang on, I missed a super chat from Mark. Sorry, Mark. I consider myself a Marxist as a college kid in the 90s. The slogan was, "Workers of the world unite." Today, the rallying cry is, "Beggars of the world unite." Well, not really the same thing, Mark. But I get your point, and I appreciate the super chat. Thank you.
of the gendered order of capitalist society and the private
Hang on.
family as a sort of, they're trying to think about the housewife as a symptom of the gendered order of capitalist society
Ding.
and the private family as a sort of focal point of capitalist neurosis. And like I think of
the private family as a focal point of capitalist neurosis. If you guys wonder why the attacks on parental rights are taking place, it's because they think the private nuclear family is the focal point of capitalist neurosis.
A very interesting question then, and colonizing or romanticizing of the worker state is the sort of, there's a counterpart to that, which is we've seen the generalization of the family in the capitalist society. It's sort of socialization into commodity exchange. And how does that, like, what does that mean for psychic and gendered organization in our age now? Like both the proliferation of trans identities, I'm trans, most of my patients are trans liberation is really central to my thinking. And on the other hand, like,
I'm shocked most of her
kind of
patients are
fascist
trans.
Imaginaries around the family. And in parapraxis, I've been trying to think these things alongside each other. Kind of how they're both symptomatic of the kind of disappearance of the housewife in some really key ways. Because the housewife is the counterpart to the patriarchy, right? To the sort of organizing father, the symbolic father that's able to.
The housewife is the counterpart to the patriarchy. The patriarchy, which is men and women, cannot exist if the housewife does not exist. Does everyone understand why? Because men wouldn't be able to go into the working world and get jobs and make money if the women weren't at home raising the kids. So if they just get the women out of the home, then you start to attack the patriarchy. But it's not enough just to get the women out of the home, because what they also say is that women have to have two jobs, which is a job in the capitalist society, which is like where they make money, because capitalism forces both parents to have a job, but then they have to do a second job of doing all of the labor of raising the kids. Buggers are the vanguard of today. Well, that's fair enough, Mark. I appreciate the super chats. Thank you. No, they're not miserable. Listen, I've said this before, but I know you're new, Dog Whistle Daniel. Socialist conferences are actually really fun to be at. I've been to CPAC. CPAC is not fun to be at. CPAC feels like it's just about like a brand and an image, and everyone's putting on a show and everyone's putting on a costume, and it's like about hookers and blow and all that. And then if you go to socialist conferences, I can wear whatever I want at a socialist conference. I will never be made fun of for being fat and ugly at a socialist conference. Everyone's going to be nice to me at a socialist conference. There are all sorts of events and social gatherings at a socialist conference that have nothing to do with brand and image and all that. Like, these people are not miserable. They do have a good time. The only reason I'm afraid of when I'm at a socialist conference is if they figure out who I am, they're going to beat the shit out of me. But like, if they don't figure out who I am, I'm actually going to have a really great time. This is why these people create culture and conservatives don't. The gender conference well, yeah, I mean, I did get possessed by a demon at that gender conference in Colorado, but I mean, it was only I was only possessed by a demon for like 2 hours. Like, I was feasing for like 2 hours. I had some beer, I had some sugar. Jennifer made me bend over a rock and did an exorcism. But then it was fine. But that was specific though, because that was a specific like multiple personality thing, and that's not typical. I don't I don't typically get possessed by a demon when I go undercover at an event, okay? That wasn't my fault.
Organize the psychic and social and sexual world coherently.
Amazing. So we're
Thank you
going
so much.
We have a bunch of questions in the chat. I've written them down. Michalena will also come back to you. We'll take a 5-minute break now, just so we have enough time in the breakout groups. So it'll be 5 minutes. So, and Maureen has added one too, which is a lovely comment. So we'll take a 5-minute break. If you're staying for breakout groups, awesome. If you're not, if you might leave now, even
Wait,
if you
is that
want
the
to
end of
come
the
back in
presentation?
40 minutes or so, that's fine.
No, they're still talking.
And I'll put you all into groups. And in at 2:02 Eastern Standard Time, you'll get.
Well, I know, Sin. The only reason I got possessed is I was being irresponsible. I didn't shield when I went to I didn't expect listen, I didn't expect a fucking multiple personality demon to be at the conference, okay? Like, that was my mistake. I wasn't grounding. I wasn't shielding. I was being irresponsible. I know. I won't make that mistake again. Everyone calm down.
Get the invitation to go join them. Okay, so don't go very far, please. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for going to breakout groups and coming back so swiftly. That was awesome. I'm happy to hear about, and I think we all are, what was coming up in the rooms. And also I have the questions still from before as well, if there's a lull and we want to turn back to them. I'll just open it up to all of you who got to go into breakout rooms today.
You can also have a discussion that isn't just questions, to put that out there.
Of course, yes, we can have an open discussion too.
And we wait.
Okay.
I'm happy to.
That
throw
was
something out
so
there,
great.
Following on bit from the group discussion, and following on from the question I asked about Engels last week, where Engels gave this like long history of the patriarchal household and what he calls monogamy, but maybe didn't specify so much what the capitalist family is, and these readings really did that.
Ooh,
Like
that's part of the
Dalacosta
whole
especially,
presentation right there.
It's about the wage, and this allows her to spool out this analysis of how the capitalist family kind of generates gender in this way by excluding women from the wage. But then she is like having to be at pains to say, we're not just calling for inclusion in the wage. That's not the solution we're looking for. Anyway, in the group discussion, we were talking a bit about home working and like the post-Fordist family.
Wait.
Angela Metropoulos writes about this as like
the post-Fordist family. Who was the god? Pop quiz for the chat. Who was the god in Brave New World? Does anyone remember? Who was the god in Brave New World? Who has read Brave New World recently or watched a movie? Who was the god in Brave New World? Ford. His Ford ship. They made an F. The sign of a Ford. Ford was considered the god in the Brave New World. I'm not making this up, right? And so they just said, like, post-Fordism. Hang on, listen again.
Discussion, we were talking a bit about home working and like the post-Fordist family.
The post-Fordist family. Why did he just say post-Fordist family? Any ideas? Post-Forist family. Anyone know why they said that? Apparently we need to like read Brave New World for book club or like watch one of the movies or something like that. Fordism is named after Henry Ford, mass production and mass consumption. Henry Ford is like one of the ultimate capitalists. Henry Ford is what ushered in the production line, right? Now, Ford is not responsible for capitalism. Do you know, pop quiz, who is actually responsible for capitalism? We learned this a couple weeks ago. Who is responsible for privatizing property? It's not Ford. It's not actually who you would expect. It's not Henry Ford, though. Farmers. Farmers are responsible for capitalism. Farmers are responsible for the privatization of property. Exactly, Reagan. But Ford is responsible for the assembly line. Brave New World had no families. Brave New World had the state was the production mechanism for all the children. Brave New World, everyone belonged to everyone else. Sound familiar?
I think Angela Mitchell.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to do so my month of narcissism is coming up for movie night because during the month of April, because April 12th is my birthday. So my month of narcissism is April. It means that in April, I can act like the biggest narcissist in the history of the world and no one can say anything about it. And I get to pick all the movies for a movie night. So one of the things we're going to watch then is going to be like, there's like a really like, here's what we're going to do. There was a TV movie made of Brave New World in like the early 80s that you can find it on YouTube. It's like for free on YouTube. We're going to watch the TV movie version of Brave New World. You guys are going to love it. It's going to be great. I think that's like the best remake of Brave New World. They haven't actually done like a good version of it, I don't think. So that's definitely going to be one of my month of narcissism picks for movie night. We're also going to watch The Twilight Zone. We're going to watch Black Mirror. And I have one more pick other than that. So we'll figure out what that is. Wait, April 12th is the 6th anniversary of your kidney sin? That's funny. That's a nice coincidence. I was going to say, that doesn't sound right. 6 month. I was going to say. Yeah, we're not going to watch the Brave New World series. Not that new one. That was not good. But like the 80s movie was okay.
Like the indistinction between the time of work and the time of life. So, I mean, is the wage still how we want to specify what the capitalist family is? And then also what, if Dalla Costa is defining it in this somewhat Fordist way of like the wage and exclusion from the wage, what does that mean now?
I mean, if I can find the Brave New World movie on YouTube, maybe we should just watch it on a stream. Why do I have to waste a whole movie night on that? If it's available on YouTube, and I know it is, maybe we'll just have like Brave New World Day on one of my streams. I wonder if I'll get a copyright strike.
Now in like post-Fordist working situations where maybe you're working from home, you don't have this clear distinction between when you're working and when you're not working. And then didn't really get so far as to think about this, but what then does this mean psychoanalytically in terms of, say, the discussion before about femininity, about hysteria, so-called, what's producing femininity? Is it exclusion from the wage? Is it something else about the capitalist family? Just a whole bunch of questions.
Capitalist
really
family.
Throw out. But yeah, thanks for the amazing presentation and discussion.
Do others want to join in and we can stack questions, or else maybe stick with this idea of how do we want to describe the family now in relation to the wage? Michelle, what would your preference be?
It seems like taking more comments. That didn't seem like a full-on direct question to me, but a sort of rumination on linked themes. So.
Alan.
I can share that one of the things that came up in our breakout room was how the readings kind of bring up this tension between the, I don't even know what word to use, like
Why does Alan have a more feminine voice when than Emmy O'Brien? I find that deeply confusing.
individual, the subject, as somebody who is part of a social group and who has particular identities that attach to them because of their position, and the singularity of the individual, particularly in the context of psychoanalysis. And we were interested in how the concept of the individual showed up in Dalla Costa, and the way that individuality now feels like not such a super Marxist value, or it seems like something that we're
Does he have an Adam's
constantly
apple?
confronted with, like
Does
how
Alan
great it is
have
to
an
be an
Adam's
individual
apple?
in neoliberalism. But yeah, I guess that's just another theme to add to the pile.
Yeah, Adam's apple. I can see it. Gay man. Not trans, gay.
Please, Alex. Alex and then Alex.
I guess kind of
So for people who are new to socialism, one of the things they do is they take multiple questions in a row. So they're not ignoring the questions or the comments. It's just that this is just what they do. They take multiple questions at once and then they answer them all at once.
Following up on Alex's comment, I would love to hear more of your thoughts about the use of the individual as it shows up in this work, and then the work of Afro-pessimists that you had referenced in your lecture, engaging with not only this idea of the family, but the liberation and abolition of the family, and the limits of the social reproduction theory in light of the ways that it doesn't totally take into account some of the core issues in Afro-pessimism.
Right, and should we get Wendy also on the table, and then we can maybe move through the many themes?
Yeah. This is kind of a speculative question, and maybe you don't have an answer, but recalling a kind of like moment of reflection and humility in which Freud understood that psychoanalysis was not something that was really for the working class to the extent that it couldn't help the problems posed by poverty, and even went maybe so far as to say that it was kind of a response or solution or treatment for a specifically bourgeois subject. I wonder, in the imagination of these kind of transformed models of eating and living and childcare, et cetera.
Eating and living and childcare.
Something like psychoanalysis or psychotherapeutic treatment looks like in like beyond the horizon of the abolition of private life, and yeah, if as practicing analyst, you have thoughts about that?
Well, now there's a lot of themes out there. So I guess I'll just talk for a minute. I think one whole set of questions is about how the world has changed since Dalla is writing, and you all will read a piece where I sort of make a few speculative.
Oh, this is a fun question from Dragon Tail. Where do I get my slime? I have many different vendors for my slime, okay? The main one that I use is called Slime Obsidian. Slime Obsidian is pretty good. I think most of my slimes are from Slime Obsidian. I have some slimes from Sunria Slime, and I like her slimes because she puts together kits where you get to mix different textures together. And I like those slimes quite a bit. Slime Obsidian. And then I also recently bought some slimes from Snoop Slimes, and they also put together kits, and I like them. But really, I just got sucked into slime because I went down the Instagram rabbit hole of slime. And then once I started watching some slime videos, other slime videos started getting recommended to me. And there are lots of good slime vendors out there that I want to try. But that is where I started. Yeah, the honey slime came from Snoop Slimes. Hang on, I'll get the honey slime. Hang on. This is the honey slime. It's golden. It was a kit where I got to mix multiple textures together. It's a really good slime.
Comments about that, and I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't.
And when I'm ready to give up socialism and just have a normal life, I'm just going to make slime for a living. I'm going to start my own slime making company, and I'm just going to make slimes, and you guys are going to buy my slimes, and we're never going to have to watch socialism again. We're just going to do slime. That's it. Slime and knitting and beer. That's it.
Find necessarily post-Forist to be the most helpful periodization, but I acknowledge there's something like that happening, right? There's sort of organization of the working class family coded as white around the housewife, and then breaking down into this era.
Wait. My favorite part of the presentation just happened. The organization of the working class family coded as white. Hello. Hello. Hello, lover. Hello, Whiteness is Capitalism. Hello. We thought we weren't going to get a whiteness in before the end of the presentation. Of course we were. Of course we are, because the nuclear family is white supremacy, because the nuclear family upholds capitalism. And as we know, whiteness means capitalism because it means that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created slavery, which is private property ownership of people. And then slavery created systemic racism or institutional racism. When they're saying whiteness or white supremacy, they're referring to the system that upholds racism, and that system is capitalism. It is like a broken record. It is. They all say the same thing over and over and over again. Let's listen one more time.
Periodization, but I acknowledge there's something like that happening, right? There's sort of organization of the working class family coded as white around the housewife, and then breaking down into this era of whatever sexual and economic chaos on some level that people imagine that way. And there's certainly been huge transformations in how social reproduction functions, in how people make choices about their family, about the formation of private households. There's been major changes in dismantling social welfare programs, in a kind of sustained attack on organized labor, and the kind of normative family form that was really a part of this previous era is now just a fantasy ideal in people's minds.
Dog Whistle Daniel has a good question. Does the abolition of private life mean the abolition of privacy, or did I misunderstand that? No, you didn't misunderstand that. We watched a presentation back in October called The Propertied Regime from one of my favorite socialist channels, Red May. Guys, May is coming up. Do you guys know what happens in May? We get Red May. Red May is the best. Red May is a revolutionary socialist group out of Seattle. And all during the month of May, they give us some of the best socialist content all year. And so Red May has a YouTube channel. And Red May did a presentation last October called The Propertied Regime, in which they explained explicitly that one form of private property is individual liberties, and they want to abolish that form of private property. So they are referencing your individual liberties, which include your right to free speech, your right to privacy, your right to practice any religion you want, etc., when they're talking about the abolition of private property. And we're going to watch a lot of socialism during May. It's going to be great. Philip loves us. Philip is the leader of Red May, not to be confused with Sean. Sean is the most handsome of all socialists. He also works with Red May. And Philip just loves it when we stream snipe him. Philip threatened to give me a copyright strike last May because I stream sniped him. And people told him to give me a copyright strike. And then I helpfully reminded Philip that Philip doesn't believe in intellectual property. And so if he had given me a copyright strike, that would have been proof that he believed in intellectual property. But Philip, as a good socialist that went to Columbia, Philip doesn't believe in property rights. And so I think I convinced Philip not to give me a copyright strike because that would have been proof that he wasn't a real communist. So I win. Philip loses. Sean is always just there looking pretty. That's all we need.
I mean, it doesn't describe anyone's private household now. Arguably, it never really described everyone, but it was an ideal that people could really partially obtain a section of the white working class. So there's that whole set of changes that's happening. The Dalla Costa.
Hang on, I got a super chat from Mark. Thank you, Mark. Arabs, Chinese, and Indian have family institutions and legal heterosexual marriage. Not a white... Well, but Mark, that doesn't matter. Will they be upset when foreigners don't follow this agenda? No, they won't be upset when foreigners don't follow this agenda because they believe that if they institute socialism or communism in America, then all other countries will fall after that. So they don't give a flying F what other countries do right now because they believe that if they get America to fall, all other countries will fall. But thank you for the super chat, Mark. I really do appreciate it. By the way, I watched a stream on YouTube of Eddie. I fucking hate Eddie. Eddie is such a meathead. Eddie of Midwestern Marks. He was doing his laundry while pontificate. Really? You think Eddie's cute? Dragon Tail. Come on. Eddie is not that good looking. And Eddie being a communist is just so unattractive. Like, it takes all of his masculine... You think Eddie is cute? I thought I knew you, Dragon Tail. I thought I did. No. Mm-mm. I guess we like what we like. It's fine. I'm not judging. Everyone likes what they like. Eddie is that meathead from Midwestern Marks, like that blonde meathead communist. Not the one with the crazy voice. The wrestler. He's a wrestler.
Doesn't foresee, right? She doesn't parse that, but she does say very clearly that were women to be fully incorporated into the workforce, it would not be freedom. And that is correct. She sees that in a way that Kollontai and Ingalls don't, right? She recognizes that if the family and wage labor are both simultaneously a part of capitalist society, then moving from one to the other might or get better in some ways, but it is not freedom. and that what the movement was demanding was not women's equality in the workforce. It was the overthrow of the workforce as a social form. And that is as relevant now as it's ever been, even if she didn't know that women would be generally incorporated into the workforce in such large numbers. The stuff about the individual, it's very complex, and there's so much theory around this, and there's so much thinking about this, and it gets into a very high level of abstraction very quickly. And I have things to say about it, but it's difficult sort of bridging the things I have to say into the extremely ornate, sophisticated theoretical registers that a lot of people spend time on around this. And so I'm hesitant to do it too much. But what I would say is that Marx at one point says something along the lines of, I'm trying to remember the quote. I think it's.
Hang on, let's see. Tayton says, Dragontail will dump Eddie if you. I'm never dumping Sophie. Why would I dump Sophie? Sophie is my #1 internet girlfriend. I'm never dumping her. She's our ginger dragon. Don't besmirch Sophie, okay? I still have my dream of getting Sophie to come talk to me on my channel someday. She's gonna do it. Sophie did a whole. Do you guys know? Sophie did an entire tarot card deck about communism. I have it on her Patreon. Yeah, I subscribe to Sophie's Patreon in order to get that. I pay her $3 a month in order to get that tarot deck. No besmirching, okay?
In the German ideology that in capitalism people relate to each other mediated by things, by commodity exchange, and that under communism people would relate to each other directly as people, that social relations would be direct.
We don't relate to each other directly as people.
I would love to hear it.
Under capitalism.
And I think there's a real truth to that. That there's that we live in a kind of maze of social roles, and then our fundamental relationships of interdependency on which we all depend for our survival, right? Like who picked these cherries I just ate during the breakout group, right? Who grew the hibiscus of the tea I'm drinking? Like, where does my electricity come from, right? Like all of this vast interdependence is as an impersonal system of commodity exchange. It's strangers calling out to each other in the darkness, right? And that we go and encounter each other highly mediated through these extremely alienated social roles, and then our encounters with each other don't even correspond to our actually existing interdependency at all, and that the only place where our encounters with each other and our interdependency come into alignment is within the family, and notably the family.
Evan, I know you're new here because I don't recognize your name, but if all you're doing is calling this bullshit, you're learning nothing, bro. Remember, you're getting your ass kicked by these people, so you can come in here and pound your chest and be like, this is bullshit, all you want. But unless you're learning what they're doing and you're learning what they believe, it's a big waste of your time to even be here, bro.
Family is the most intense site of gender and sexual normalization, like in society as a whole. It's the place where the expectations on you are most intensely gendered on many levels. And, you know, it's like extremely alienating in a whole different way. And so if we were to think about freedom, that there's some level at which actually encountering each other, not through these sort of infinite impersonal mediations, would be a very powerful thing to do. And it does not happen under neoliberalism. It is not what neoliberals call the individual. It is not what humanists that are being critiqued by Afro-pessimists call the human. It is not, right, a distinction between civilized and non-civilized. It is something, it is a horizon of possibility yet to be discovered in human relations. What would it mean to encounter each other on the other side of class society in a way that isn't based on just scarcity, right? And Dalla Costa is pointing to the way this happens in the moments on the barricades, right? People meet each other at protest sites, and they are transformed in that moment. They're transformed from the social roles.
Evan is defending his whining in my chat. He's saying, my point is, it isn't real. They're talking like it's real. Bro, every attack on parental rights that's happening in the world today is because of what we're watching right now. Gender ideology in schools, convincing kids that they are gender fluid or gender queer or the opposite gender or whatever, is because of what we're watching right now. I don't know how much more real you want this to be. Because not only are these people more powerful than you, not only are these people more influential than you, but these people own your children. These people own the schools. These people control what your kids learn. You want to tell me this isn't real? Your kids think it's real. Your kids believe it. Your kids are acting it out in the real world. That's why upwards of 40% of students in schools today believe that they're genderqueer, gender fluid, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming, etc., 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 etc. So you can come cry in my chat all you want, saying, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. Your kids think it is real. And your kids are existing in a world where it's real. So if you don't want your kids to be owned by this, then you need to start taking it a little bit more seriously than you're taking it right now, bro.
That is expected of them, and they open onto new, fresh encounters. And I think a lot about how mass protest transforms people, how riots transform people,
how riots transform people. Holy shit.
And I think it breaks open kind of all our ideas about the human, about the social, into like actually trying to hear each other. And that really that has something to do with psychoanalysis. That psychoanalysis is like working through the vast system of resistances and transference that prevent us from actually encountering each other on some level.
Psychoanalysis is about working through the vast systems of resistance that prevent you from fully embracing being a good comrade. That's what she just said. Psychoanalysis is about working through your own resistance in terms of assimilating to the collective.
Well, encounter each other freshly. And I don't think that could actually be adequately theorized. I think definitionally in a society not in the middle of insurrection, you could only partially think about that. It cannot be thought about because it would require breaking beyond the limits of thought as we know them. And then everything that we theorize, social.
Well, okay, Evan, now we're getting somewhere. You're simply astonished at what they believe. Let's stick with that, bro. Let's stick with that. Have you been to a Socialism Saturday before? Have you watched Socialism with me before? Or are you new? Because this what we're watching right now is the tip of the iceberg of what these people believe. We do this 6 days a week. We do Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. We do Saturdays at 6 p.m. We're changing up the streaming schedule this week because I got something else to do, but like normally that's what we do. What you need to understand is what they believe is what the kids in K through 12 public schools believe. And you might not think it's real, and that's fine. It's fine because you're right. I'm going to validate you, okay? What you're saying is right. This is all made up bullshit. But, okay, Evan is new. We're going to welcome Evan, okay? Evan, we need you to come back for a little while. And everyone that's new here, we need you to come back and keep watching. Because what I'm showing you here tonight is the tip of the iceberg of what these people believe. It gets worse than this. People in the chat that have been here for a while can testify to this. I want everyone who's been watching Socialism with me for a while to tell people that are new like Evan what they're going to learn when they watch Socialism with me. Because this, what we're watching right now, is what controls the K through 12 schools. If people do not start facing reality of what is controlling the K through 12 schools, they're going to win, and they're going to win soon, and they're going to win badly. So I understand it's a lot, bro. I really, really do. Stick with us. We're going to show you. Tayton says, I thought the same thing 2 years ago, Evan. Yeah, we've been doing this a while. Welcome to our world, Evan. You're not going to believe what we have here.
Reproduction, the sort of systematic organization of the human as a regime of social death, the sort of how are the many ways we can theorize gender, are all sort of theorizing kind of what it means to be an alienated person in class society, the world that we live in. And you know, that Frank Wilderson and others are right, that like the only way to really talk about freedom is to talk about the end of the world. And that Dalla-Costa knows that on some level.
The only way to talk about freedom is to talk about the end of the world. Think about that. Let's wrap up. We got 4 minutes left. Oh, hang on. Divine says, remember androgynous. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point. So these people take androgynous testosterone as a party drug. They do. We have them on video saying this. They take testosterone when they're going to like a rave or something. Who we got that from was Jules Joanne Gleason. Jules Gleason, and it was on a channel called Rabbles of the World. And Jules Gleason is one of the editors of a book called Transgender Marxism, and she talked all about how they use androgynous testosterone as a party drug. True story.
Level in this moment that like freedom would be the other side of the end of the world, and that the end of the world is necessarily being the overcoming of the family as a unit of capitalist society.
Holy shit. Hang on, I'm sorry. The end of the world is overcoming the unit of the family of capitalist society. Hang on, let's listen again. One more time.
Freedom is to talk about the end of the world. And you know, that Frank Wilderson and others are right, that like the only way to really talk about freedom is to talk about the end of the world. And that Dalla-Costa knows that on some level in this moment, that like freedom would be the other side of the end of the world, and that the end of the world is necessarily being the overcoming of the family as a unit of capitalist society, as a crucial dimension of that. So like which words we want to use, individual, person, subject, I'm not really sure. I mean, I think in each register, the sort of tension between the kind of vast possibilities we have yet to discover between each other and the highly alienated maelstrom of confusion that actually constitutes our lives, that tension is parsed differently. I do not think the object of psychoanalysis is ever the individual. It is the subject, and the subject is always socially constituted. And that, Dalla-Costa says that at the end, you know, in various places, but that is why we need the seminar. That is why we need to think about the family, both as an object of white supremacy and of capitalism and of psychoanalysis. And we have to think about that together, because the family is where.
Oh my God, way to culminate this so beautifully. Oh my God. The family as a unit of white supremacy and as a unit of capitalism. Tayton says, stream number 500 and no Gnostic sex cult detected. Yeah. Yeah. No Gnostic sex cult here, James. No Gnostic sex cult. Let's listen one more time. This is my favorite part of the entire stream. Don't worry, I'm marking it for a clip. Don't worry.
But that is why we need the seminar. That is why we need to think about the family, both as an object of white supremacy and of capitalism and of psychoanalysis. And we have to think about that together, because the family is where the psychic production of the individual and the immediate social relations of our upbringing and the global organization of racial capitalism all come and meet, and they're all the same thing. And they're all the same thing in our unconscious.
They're all the same thing? Really? You don't say they're all the same thing? Are you saying that the nuclear family is whiteness, is capitalism? They're all the same thing? Oh my word. Can we just watch that one more time? I might have an orgasm live on the stream right now. Oh my God. This is like the best part of the entire presentation. This is definitely not because of the beer. This stuff just gets me off. It's true. Let's listen one more time.
That is why we need to think about the family both as an object of white supremacy and of capitalism and of psychoanalysis. And we have to think about that together, because the family is where the psychic production of the individual and the immediate social relations of our upbringing and the global organization of racial capitalism all come and meet, and they're all the same thing. And they're all the same thing in our unconscious, in our free associations, clinic room, right? The social bond is the constitution of the subject, right? Desire is the desire of the other. There is no individual beyond the social bond, right? It's in the social link that we become constituted as speaking people. And that's why we need Marxist feminism if we want to talk about the clinic. That's why we need an encounter with Afro-pessimism, an encounter with communism, if we want to even begin to think about the power of psychoanalysis.
Wow. Devon says, Carlin was right. Interchanging words for the same. Everyone owes me $2. I've been telling you this for 3 years. Nuclear family equals capitalism equals white supremacy. I love it when I get proven right about everything. There's nothing that turns me on more than when I get proven right about absolutely everything over and over and over and over and over again. 2 minutes. Everyone owes me $2.
I think that's an incredibly moving place to stop for today, as we are just 1 minute shy.
I
For
am an
more
Aries.
time thinking with Michelle, of course, come back in 2 weeks, same bat time, same bat place, but also this new event. I'll drop
All
the
right,
link
that
again
seems to
in
be
the
all they have, but this YouTube channel has like 13 talks about abolishing the family, so maybe we'll watch some more of them sometime. But I think we climaxed well there at the end, didn't we? That was all I needed. That was all I needed. All right, guys, banner Socialism Saturday. That was awesome. If you've never been to a Socialism Saturday before, I hope it was as good for you as it was for me. Just as a reminder, I do not stream on Sundays because I need a life too. But what we do on Sundays is we watch a movie in my supporter Discord at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow we will be watching the classic The Shawshank Redemption, which is one of the greatest movies of all time. If you've never seen The Shawshank Redemption, Jennifer hosts an amazing movie night. She brings trivia. We listen to music. We temper down from the socialism insanity of Socialism Saturday. So if you want to support the work I'm doing and get access to perks such as movie night, head over to my Substack, Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year, and you will get access to movie night. And what's going to happen is tomorrow, I'm going to send out an email that looks like this. It will not be this email. It will be another email with this week's newsletter. And in this newsletter, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the email, Underneath this red box, you will find the link to my supporter Discord. Now, normally, as a reminder, we do community Zoom calls on Monday and Wednesday. I am going to Boise, Idaho to do a presentation, and so we might have to reschedule or postpone our community Zoom calls for this week. So don't look for links in the email, but you can look for links to the Discord. And join the Discord, come and watch movie night with us tomorrow. And you can find those links in the email that I'm going to send out tomorrow from the Substack. And guys, that is all we have for Socialism Saturday this week. I've got some Chinese food waiting for me downstairs, so I'm going to go take advantage of that. But thank you guys for hanging out with me for Socialism Saturday. Please mount that like button on the way out the door. I really do appreciate it. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And I will be back when I'm back. Stay tuned for some announcements. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon. Have a good one.